of working in the field that, or degrees and employment in the field that they earn their degree, and then removing another cost barrier. Those resources could also be utilized to ramp up work-based learning programs and other such models that we know work for students and help them get to that first job towards career mobility. We want to explore options of a cash deferral instead. And we've seen that in the past. You saw that during the pandemic, where the state of California can essentially issue an IOU that is paid back over several years or at a future date. That allows colleges to move forward with their projects and commitments without having to take those cuts, and the state of California does pay them back. Another option is to mitigate the impact of these proposed cuts by providing some alignment and flexibility across 3 programs: the COVID-19 Response Block Grant, the Enrollment and Retention Funds, and the Deferred Maintenance and Instructional Equipment Fund. That allows districts to plan accordingly with their budgets and make decisions based on what's best for them and looking at their own local data. So if a college has already made commitments with their COVID-19 block grant, but hasn't done so for enrollment and retention or for deferred maintenance, they don't have to cut in those critical areas. So that is something that we're exploring. We've heard from a lot of our partners that this is a solution that would work for them. Again, not ideal, but it is one that we are proposing as one to be viable. My last slide is just a reminder that we do put out a very comprehensive resource in the joint analysis. If you haven't seen that, it is linked to your agenda item. Please take a look at it. It goes into a lot more detail than we have time today, but I highly encourage that so you can get a sense of the depth of the resources that are available for colleges and how they may be utilized. The budget will move fast, as you can see here, and the next phase will be for legislative actions, which are expected this week by actions by the Assembly and Senate with their version of the budget. And then they will negotiate with the governor for their final considerations. And we expect an on-time budget by June 15th. With that, go to the next slide just to remind you of a link where you can find all things budget news and other resources, but happy to open to any questions you may have or any comments. But thank you again for your continued advocacy and support of our students and system.
Thank you, Dr. Navarrete. Great presentation as always. Board members, any questions or comments regarding the May revise? I see Board Member Perry.
Yeah, I do not have a question. I just want to underscore, reiterate, and champion what Lizette and also interim Chancellor Gonzalez said about thanking the governor for continuing to support affordable housing. It is a game changer for our students. We all know this, but we have 60% of our students reporting themselves as housing insecure, and the opportunity to provide 5,000 new opportunities for them to be housed and therefore increase their academic achievements. And also it rings so true with our new commitment to holistically supporting our students, our under-resourced students, and making sure they have everything at their reach to achieve their academic goals. So I really, truly thank the governor for his leadership, and also Lizette and everyone who's worked so hard to move this forward. Thank you. And Amy for the task force. So thank you.
You colleagues, any other questions or comments in room? I see a hand, but it's too small to see who it is, so go for it.
It's Bog Member Medina. I basically echo the words in which Bog Member Perry said. I want to thank the Chancellor's Office for your continued advocacy and push for housing for our most vulnerable students, and I personally and throughout the whole state, California Community College system. But I also want to thank you, because I would be remiss if I didn't thank the Student Center for California Community Colleges. I mean, both of you have worked so hard in collaboration, going to committees. I mean, countless, calling legislators, going to events. I want to thank you for working very close with the official student voice of the California Community College system, in which we have some members actually here today, in which I'm really happy for.
Thanks. I think I saw Board Member Haynes waving her hand too.
I'm sorry. Okay. So I apologize because you may have gone you may have said something relative to this and I just missed it. So there, I guess it's the LAO that is, somebody has said there's in the May revise, there's still too much money in certain areas and you're going to have to cut some more. Is there any indication of any of the things having to do with our community colleges that we need to be concerned about or need to advocate for or what have you relative to our portion of the budget?
Thank you, Board Member Haynes. You're correct, and I appreciate you raising that. The Legislative Analyst's Office has released an analysis that identifies that they do have concerns with the out-year budget projections and are proposing recommendations to actually adopt a 5.1 cost of living adjustment instead of an 8.22. We have concerns with that. And we also recognize that the governor's commitment to us as part of the roadmap was also to ensure that we were provided the cost of living adjustment that's included in the statutory cost of living adjustment. So we continue to support that approach. The budget right now includes $503 million to apportionments that are on a one-time basis. And the Department of Finance is committed to revisiting those on an annual basis. A couple of moving revenue parts that are hard to predict given the extended deadline of federal taxes is, personal income taxes. The other is property taxes actually continue to be higher than projected. So that's something positive in terms of looking at next year. And then the other is EPA as well. Funds might be areas that could have some resources in the future. So, we'll continue to monitor those, but at this juncture, we're proposing that we stay strong in supporting the 8.22 cost of living adjustment.
I have a question on that as well, Dr. Navarrete. So the LAO's revenue forecast across the multi-year is actually lower than the administration's. So, you've put forward a couple of potential recommendations, including deferral, block grants. Should revenues come in lower, do we still feel confident that those solutions would be helpful to districts?
Great question. If revenues come in lower at October when the federal tax deadline comes in, we still feel comfortable that these are the right solutions for colleges and that they can absorb. We also know that at that point, the legislature and the governor will be looking at reserves that are included as part of Prop 98 and other options as well. And so those are some of the pieces. And in our local projections, we're seeing that local property taxes have continued to come in slightly higher than projected, which is something that's one of the positive pieces of news I can offer today.
Thank you. Colleagues, any other questions or comments for Dr. Navarrete? I'm not seeing any. With that, do we have any questions or comments from members of the public?
The public comment period on item 6.3 is now open. We will begin with public comments in Sacramento and then move on to virtual comments. For virtual attendees, please use the raise hand feature, pressing *9 if you are calling in. You will have 2 minutes. I will hand it over to Vice President Aguinaldo to begin with public remarks in Sacramento.
Thank you very much. We have 2 public comments on this item. The first one is from Wendy and the second one's from Larry.
Hello, Wendy Brill-Wynkoop, President of the Faculty Association of California Community Colleges. As we think about the state budget and what to prioritize during a budget deficit, FAC encourages the board to focus on per student funding. Per student funding is currently around $8,000, which is higher than we've typically seen. Yes, a lot of this increase is due to the enrollment loss that we must regain. However, we found ourselves with an opportunity to make progress toward ending the status quo of inequitable funding for California community colleges. This is a unique opportunity to invest more in our students and advance equity for higher education for our most diverse student population. Some state policymakers have said that our colleges have not earned their funding because we're serving fewer students despite receiving increased resources. This is deficit-minded approach, disregards the reality that we have been underfunded for so long. While none of us wanted enrollment loss to spark an increase in per student funding, it would be short-sighted to take a punitive approach now that we could instead have a growth mindset. So let's double down for our students and find an opportunity in unpredictability by establishing an appropriate baseline of per student funding and focus our advocacy efforts on reaching it. Recent budgets have moved us in the right direction, and let's not go backward.
30 seconds.
Equitable per student funding is in sight if we work together.
President Costa, Vice President Aguinaldo, Dr. Gonzalez, Larry Glizio from the League. First, I want to say that in the years that I've been with the League, I think this is the time that we are most aligned with the advocacy that the government relations team in terms of the response to the May revision. What we're hearing from the districts is exactly what interim deputy chancellor Navarrete just said. We come from the perspective at the districts, ideally with the budget, there's some degree of stability, predictability, and flexibility. In California, that is quite a challenge, of course. But number one on the housing, as Member Perry said, it is essential, and we really do want to thank the governor. If you happen to see the governor, tell him thank you. The districts are firmly behind that and really appreciate that. I know the students feel the same way. So that's very important. In terms of the COLA, would agree exactly with what Dr. Navarrete said. Yes, we can afford this. It is needed. Have you been to the grocery store? The districts, the costs are have skyrocketed. So we think with the reserves, we can do this. And in terms of the one-time funding, we understand it, but we think it's that essential. And then not most importantly, but either having some kind of deferral of one-time funds to deal with the reduction in deferred maintenance and instructional equipment would be something that we need to do, or flexibility with COVID-19 and the block grant and the enrollment strategy so the districts can respond to the needs of the communities and students. So again, we're very aligned with the Chancellor's office and the government relations. We thank the governor and hope if you see him, you'll relay those messages.
President Costa, that includes in-person comments, and there are no hands raised at this time.
Great, thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. Next up, we have item 6.4, equitable baccalaureate degree completion, led by Dr. Lowe, who will be joined with some special guests on this item.
Good afternoon, Board of Governors. Aisha Lowe, Executive Vice Chancellor of the Office of Equitable Student Learning Experience and Impact. Excited to have this conversation with you around equitable baccalaureate degree completion. And shortly, I will be joined by guests joining us from the University of California Office of the President and the CSU Chancellor's Office. Next slide, please. So a couple of items we want to cover in this informational item. One, as you just heard in the state of the system from Interim Chancellor Dr. Gonzalez, the importance of equitable baccalaureate degree pathways as we think about all of the progress that our system has made towards the goals of the vision for success, and yet the gaps that remain. Of course, the prevailing question is, well, how do we close those gaps and move forward to the full attainment of our goals? And part of what we will discuss with you today, that an essential element of meeting all of the goals of the vision for success is really focusing on equitable pathways to baccalaureate degree completion. We'll talk about the important role that California community colleges play in ensuring that access to those pathways and our student success in those pathways, and then present to you really what we are presenting as an ecosystem of programs and initiatives that are being leveraged toward those goals. Next slide, please. So starting here with a bit of framing as to why we are having this discussion. and why this matters and connects to what we were just talking about earlier in terms of meeting the goals of the Vision for Success. And why should we, the California Community College system, be talking about pathways to baccalaureate degree completion? Well, the data you see before you is part of the why, and you heard this in some of Dr. Gonzalez's comments. Our communities are in need, right? We have high levels of poverty within our state, and those levels vary depending on what region you're focused on. Of course, these are lower in some of our more affluent regions, but across the board, you see high levels of poverty in our state. We also know that education is a pathway out of that poverty. And despite some of the national rhetoric about whether or not advanced degrees are still valuable, we know that a college credential remains a valuable and important economic and workforce outcome. We also know that for many of our community college students who are often among some of those who are living in poverty and trying to find their way out of poverty, they are among what we often call the working poor. We're talking about individuals where families are working, sometimes more than one job, trying to piece together a living across a number of different low-wage opportunities. And so the work that we do in the California Community Colleges to provide these equitable pathways to baccalaureate degree completion for our student population, some of the most vulnerable Californians, is absolutely essential to meeting the goals of the Vision for Success. Next slide, please. So as we lean into this work, we want to lean into it with this framing that this is really a moral imperative, right? And that's so important. We just talked about the budget, many other topics that come before you, but we always want to remember that the work we do as a system is about more than maintaining institutions. The work that we do in this system is about transforming lives. And the California Community Colleges are essential to being a part of Californians' pathway out of poverty and a key opportunity to transform lives and communities. Next slide, please. So you heard reference to this important goal during the State of the System as well, that as we talk about pathways to equitable baccalaureate completion, we are very much aligned with the Recovery with Equity Plan and the Roadmap for Higher Education, and very aligned in the role that community colleges are going to play to meet this very audacious state goal. And we applaud state leadership and the governor's office for setting such an audacious goal of getting to 70% credential attainment for Californians by 2030. And we wholeheartedly believe that the community college system will be absolutely essential to the state meeting this important goal. Next slide, please. So taken together, when we look at the needs of our state, the goals of our state, and the opportunities within our state, California community colleges have a great opportunity to help meet these needs and to achieve these goals. We all know this well. We are a nation state. We are a massive state, both in terms of our size and our population, as well as our economy. And while it may seem small in percentage, we know in sheer numbers, the California community colleges serve quite a few students, right? 1.8 million students. To date, 34% of Californians have a college degree. So we are quite a ways away from the 70% attainment goal, but we have some clear evidence that community colleges will be essential to meeting that goal. And we see that now even in our intersegmental relationships with CSU and UC, where 51% of California State University graduates started at a community college, and nearly a third of University of California graduates started at a community college. So there is great potential here for our system to continue to further these equitable baccalaureate degree pathways. Next slide. So typically, Board of Governors, when we've engaged you in this conversation, we've been focused on equitable pathways to transfer specifically. And we are in no way moving away from that important framing, but broadening it to understand that transfer is one of many pathways to a baccalaureate degree. And of course, as I'll talk about today, our own community college baccalaureate degrees are also a part of that ecosystem. And we know that there has been much progress. You heard that as a part of the state of the system. We have had increases in ADT completion. We have had increases in transfer. We have a number of different pathways, including our HBCU agreements, our relationships with our independent colleges and universities. So over the last 10 or so years, there's been a great proliferation of pathways for transfer for our students, and we've seen some important increases that are there. So we're certainly celebrating the progress that has been made. Next slide, please. But part of the work before us now is how do we deal with and dismantle the significant barriers that remain despite the progress that has been made. So while our community college students are transferring at higher levels, while we have had a proliferation of transfer pathways, we far too often see a complexity in that process that hinders far too many students from moving forward. We have very mobile students. In our work around Common Course numbering and looking at some data there, we have learned that 45% of community college students attend more than one community college. So our students are highly mobile. We therefore need those credits and that learning to transfer between community college institutions. We need those credits and that learning to transfer across segments of higher education. And we ultimately need that learning to transfer into the workforce and workforce preparation for our students. So part of our work before us is to dismantle this maze, this labyrinth that students have to engage in to find their way to a baccalaureate degree completion, often without the support that they need. It's been very sort of impactful for me to hear even leaders in our state, leaders in our system who have quote unquote beat the odds and make it, talk about when they were in college, when resources were available to them, but they simply didn't feel comfortable. They didn't feel comfortable going to engage a counselor. They didn't feel comfortable having those conversations with their faculty members. So when we think about the solutions here are much more complex than let's just have more counselors, much more complex than let's just simply arm faculty with the information. We really do need to significantly decrease the complexity so that students can navigate these processes. So that's going to mean a couple of things that we need to focus on, and we'll talk about how these programs and initiatives that are moving forward are a part of an ecosystem to help accomplish these things. But a few things that contribute to the maze. We have a multiplicity of system level major and general education transfer program types of different sorts with different requirements. As we think about the process of course articulation and the transference of credit from a community college to a four-year system, we have differing requirements for our two primary systems of public higher education, as well as AICCU with our private institutions. And then within segments, we have sort of locally distinguished institution by institution differences in requirements. So all of this variation in local agreements, all of this variation in transfer pathways contribute to the complexity of this maze that our students are trying to navigate. Next slide, please. So what is the path forward for us? It is absolutely essential that we cease to put the onus of responsibility on students, that they just need to work harder to navigate the maze, that we need to stop creating tools to help students navigate the maze, but instead we need to dismantle the maze. How do we apply the guided pathways framework and the principles of baccalaureate degree pathways to actually have a seamless set of policies, practices, and structures that will more seamlessly help our students to find their way to successful baccalaureate degree completion. And you're seeing some of those strategies here, all aligned with the guided pathways framework and focused on the ultimate goal of credit mobility. How do we maximize these opportunities for students to actually apply their learning toward the intended outcomes? Ensuring that they're not just engaging in classes for the sake of seat time and getting through, but have opportunities to apply their learning. How do we reduce the high levels of repetition our students often now face? We heard you all, Board of Governors, when you saw the very slight decline in unit accumulation. One of the major causes behind that continued unit accumulation is because of these disparate and often changing local requirements. For example, if I'm a community college student and I have 4 institutions I'm interested in potentially transferring to, I have a general education pattern, but then there might be distinction in general education requirements and our major preparation requirements across those 4 institutions. So if I want to position myself well to be competitive at a community college, I need to not only complete the general education requirements, I need to also complete any course requirements that are distinct among those 4 institutions. Now imagine I'm aiming for 6, or I'm really a go-getter and I want to make sure I can apply to 12 different institutions. Right? Requirements compound the more I want to be competitive, and it therefore contributes to that unit accumulation amongst our students. So it's absolutely essential that we find a way to truly streamline our pathways and to eliminate as much of that sort of local variation that exists in our policies and practices. Next slide. Again, as I've said, all of this is toward the goal of credit mobility. How do we ensure that credits are mobile, that credits move with our students as they transition within our system and move with our students seamlessly as they transition off to 4-year opportunities. So we need to maximize those opportunities and make sure that we have the kind of policies and practices in place that do that and make that seamless. And again, take the responsibility off students and shift those administrative burdens onto our institutions. We need to make sure that the knowledge and skills that students are mastering are applied to credit. We see that in other work that we won't talk about as much today, like credit for prior learning and competency-based education. We want to reduce the bias in awarding and applying credit. The unfortunate truth is far too often some of the distinctions around what credit will and will not be accepted is based in bias, right? It is based in whether or not the receiving institution has positive views of the institution from which that credit is coming, or the program, or the faculty there, or the modality in which the course was taught, right? A lot of sort of individual subjective decisions are being made that often hinder credits from being mobile. And we also want to make sure that we're transparent in the process and eliminate some of the confusion for our students. Next slide. So this is a sort of a visual to encapsulate how this work all comes together. We certainly know that our system over the past few years have experienced what we all call that initiative fatigue, but we're really trying to reframe the conversation. These are not separate and distinct initiatives. This is one ecosystem of tools and levers that we will use as a system to help increase the opportunities for these equitable pathways to baccalaureate degree completion. We will not delve into all of these today. We do not have time for that, but you see highlighted in the goldish yellow text what we will focus on today. We will provide you an update on common course numbering, on dual admissions. In particular, we will have guests from our 4-year segment partners to talk about their dual admissions programs. We'll talk a little bit about dual enrollment and this concept of beginning in the 9th grade onto these pathways, as well as AB 928. Common course numbering, and of course, our CCC baccalaureate degrees. But you also see within this constellation, this ecosystem, the important work that we've done around equitable placement, credit for prior learning, competency-based education, experiential work-based learning, all efforts that are moving forward towards truly actualizing guided pathways across these different initiatives. Next slide, please. All right, let's talk a little bit about dual enrollment, beginning the path in high school. Next slide. So dual enrollment, of course, is not new to you or new to our system, but we will see a new fervor and focus on dual enrollment under the leadership of our incoming chancellor, Dr. Christian, who has already dove into this work and has some efforts underway. And here we are talking about beginning that pathway to a baccalaureate degree in high school, right? Starting earlier in students' trajectory, very much aligned to the guided pathways framework of clarifying the path for students when they are in high school, helping to actually enter on that path. So a lot of this work that we're moving forward is around how do we shift from more of a cafeteria style model of dual enrollment, where there are offerings students can engage in, to more of a prefix meal, right? Where students in high school are actually beginning to engage on a pathway towards transfer or towards a workforce outcome. We definitely believe that as we can engage high school students in dual enrollment, this increases the likelihood of them staying on the path, having entered into it at a younger stage in their academic career. Next slide. Essential to implementing dual enrollment is really within the Chancellor's Office dual enrollment strategic framework, and this focus on ensuring that we utilize dual enrollment as an equity gap closing strategy. As we dug into the data on dual enrollment, we see unfortunate equity gaps there. Dual enrollment is traditionally being utilized by more middle-class families, families where the students were likely already on a pathway to higher education, making good and smart use of the opportunity to get college credit and to help them to get ahead as they transfer. How do we, of course, not close the gap on that important opportunity, but make sure that we're intentional about targeting low-income students, targeting students of color for dual enrollment, targeting those students that have traditionally been left out of higher education, and using these dual enrollment courses in high school as an opportunity to start to inculcate within them sort of a view of themselves as a higher education scholar, getting them on a pathway to higher education while they are in high school, and helping them to see that it is a viable option for them. So that's going to be essential as we continue to expand dual enrollment. Last slide on this one, looking now at the strategy here. A couple of impetus here. One, dual enrollment just making sense as a guided pathway strategy, being aligned to our goals of closing equity gaps. But we also have some important goals that were given to our system and that we agree to within the roadmap for higher education. And that is us increasing the percentage of 12th graders who complete high school with at least 12 units of dual enrollment credit by 15%. So we're working on setting a baseline now. What is that current percentage? And then what is our plan of action to increase that by 15%? The bold, audacious goal behind that is imagine a day in the not too distant future where it is the norm for every ninth grader in California to engage in dual enrollment. Imagine every ninth grader in California has a course that they take, sort of like a self-development, career exploration or future planning course. They get introduced to college, they get introduced to pathways, and they leave that ninth grade course with a college education plan while they're in high school. And that college education plan includes at least 12 units of dual enrollment, pathway aligned, right, to a particular destination for transfer and for workforce. And think about also in 12th grade, then how you roll into that process, things like the completing of the FAFSA, helping students to navigate financial aid, right? So we want to dream of this beautiful future together. And we're beginning that work now with this ninth grade strategy. So you will hear this, a lot of this, more about this in the coming weeks and months. This is certainly a high priority for incoming Chancellor Christian. We've already begun the work. Incoming Chancellor Christian has been individually reaching out to CEOs and presidents, talking about this strategy, recruiting them to get on board with the strategy. And we are partnering with Career Ladders Project to provide hands-on technical assistance and professional development to colleges, literally having workshops at colleges to help them set up this infrastructure to start to implement this vision of ninth grade to baccalaureate degree. Mr. Williams, I saw your hand.
Please figure out how to include K-12 superintendents and their business offices, because not all colleges are created equal in how they're doing dual enrollment. It would be great to get a list of like who's the best in the state at doing this, because like some folks don't understand how both organizations can claim apportionment, and it's just a range of just different things that are happening. And I get a chance to kind of see how the sausage is made, and then even like colleges like understanding they got to look at DNF reports, because there's some students, just because of the way that K-12 sets up their criteria, are going to get locked out, and they won't, like African-American boys, they're not going to get in at all, because if you put a C or better to get in there, then, you know, it's a lot that just won't, or if it's like disciplines and all of those different things. And so it would be great if we can do like a conference on dual enrollment so that folks can just hear it from the chancellor's office, because there's so many different answers and responses out there that I'm not really sure how these programs are getting built like at a scalable level. And so if y'all can really include the K-12 people in, so they don't just have to hear from the colleges, because it's a lot of different things that are happening.
No, absolutely. So a couple of things that I did not mention here that are part of that strategy. One is that collaboration with CDE, but also we're making plans to reach out directly to some of those K-12 associations. So we're not limited with just having to go through the California Department of Education. So how do we get in front of those leaders specifically and talk to them about the potential of dual enrollment and what it can do for both their K-12 institution as well as community colleges, and ultimately what it means for their students. And then yes, to exactly your point about these local workshops that are being planned, what we honed in on was exactly that. Where do we have districts and colleges that are already doing dual enrollment well, and it'll be easier for them to expand? How do we then have a tiered approach and figure out what the more tailored technical assistance is for colleges for whom this might be new or more nascent, right? So that partnership with Career Ladders Project is going to be essential. They are the sort of leading pioneering subject matter experts on this topic for the state of California. So we're utilizing their expertise. They have a set of resources that we're reviewing and seeing how do we further update those, but they really get into those weeds. How do you establish these MOUs? How do you collaborate with your K-12 partner? And so we're looking to have that sort of direct PD for colleges. Yes, Member Haynes.
So a little bit earlier in your presentation, you were just talking generally about transfer to our system. And in my travels, I've spoken to a lot of students, and what has emerged is the use of the ADT, and that's what we want them to do. But in a number of those conversations, many of the students that I spoke to had multiple ADTs. And I'm really trying to wrap my arm around the reasoning for that. Was it the result of not being accepted because they had been in school and not being accepted in that particular school? Was it the result of just a kind of a slight change in where they wanted to go? Some of those are legitimate, and then others are not so legitimate. And so, especially if they have all of the requirements in one of those ADTs, but they just didn't get accepted into school, the school of their choice. And so I'm hoping that the chancellor's office staff can identify where the gaps are, what's missing, or what is the challenge. And maybe it's just that they're place bound. And so they're truly trying to wait till they get accepted into a particular school. Our students are really, really smart. And so they are looking at all of the different community colleges and whether or not that college is a pipeline to the school they want to go to. And they're making a decision to go to that community college because it is a much more, it gets them where they want to go faster. And so I think we just need to be aware of the landscape from the vantage point of our students and why they're making the decisions they are making.
No, absolutely, President Haynes. And we'll get into that a little bit under the 928 work.
Thank you.
Board Member Medina.
I mean, I would implore you not stop at 12 units, but if they could get their associate's degree, even better. At Compton College, we have an early high school program in which some students actually graduate literally with their associate's degree probably a week before their high school diploma. My colleague here at Harvard College, LA Harvard College, is also the same. Santa Ana College, we did a listening tour, learning tour, and they have a program, along the lines of the same, with the same emphasis. But with that being said, I mean, especially nowadays, with the different, one thing with the new norm after the pandemic is modalities of courses, which I'm really big as a non-traditional student, imploring, not just focusing on the typical, obviously from 9 through 5 classes and so on, but the evening, the high flex, online, the courses that you could take on the week is asynchronous, synchronous. So we could continue to emphasize that. and, demonstrate to students and also their parents, obviously, once you have the students on board, hey, you get the parents on board, we show you the process and all that. That's great. That'll be great for our system, and it closes equity. Most importantly, obviously, it's an equity issue. It closes these gaps affecting many students of color, communities in which education is the key to success, and what better way to obviously get to that success with the help of the California Community College system.
Absolutely. So excited for the excitement, Board of Governors, and we'll continue to bring you updates on the expansion of dual enrollment. I will keep us moving forward. Next slide, please. Wanted to provide you an update on another hot topic that already came up today, common course numbering. This work is really about clarifying the path as students transition. As I mentioned earlier, 45% of our students attend more than one community college, right? So common course numbering is a helpful tool to add to the transparency of clarifying pathways. And while it is a particular mandate for our system, the ultimate goal of common course numbering is about streamlining transfer between our system and our four-year partners and reducing excess credit accumulation, as we talked about earlier today. Now, common course numbering is not a panacea. It is not going to solve all of the complexities of course articulation and transfer, but it is foundational work that will help us to move into that direction. Imagine again that fictional college student I put myself in the position of. I'm navigating multiple requirements across different institutions. But imagine that as I've moved across the community college system and I've achieved greater credit mobility within the system, the hope is that it alleviates some of those layers of complexity as students go to transfer. Important to know, next slide, I've moved on. Important to know that AB 1111 Common Course Numbering calls for a student-facing Common Course Number system, and this addresses your earlier question, Board Member Haynes, by July of 2024. Is when we're supposed to have achieved a student-facing common course numbering system. As I will update, we have a plan. It's not a plan that will conclude by July of 2024, but to make good progress and to be clear on how we will get there. So we certainly want to make sure, in particular, why that timeline is difficult is because we don't want to just throw something together. We could, right? We could just throw together a super numbering system that we layer on top of the work that has already been done with CID. It won't actually achieve the goal. So we do want to take the time to actually achieve the goals and implementing common course numbering in a manner that actually maximizes the benefits to students over the long term. But that will take time in a system of our size and with our complexity. And one thing that is so important to note here, common course numbering is not about a course numbering system. It's about the alignment of curriculum across 116 colleges. That is a Herculean effort. We want to get to the point where we can say, no matter where you go to college, across this vast state, this nation state, at 116 institutions, English 1A is English 1A is English 1A. Well, in order to do that, there is a whole system-wide process we have to engage in with faculty to look at the various variations of the types of English 1A that exist now in our system, identify at what levels of a course's details do we want to determine something is similar, and then how do we go about transforming the curriculum of 116 colleges to this new standard of similarity. Adrian's been part of these discussions. It is a lot of work. It's important work. We're going to do the work, and we have a plan of action to get there. Next slide, please. So this gives you a high-level overview or snapshot of the current timeline per the legislation. And we are in the phase of the task force. So we're developing recommendations for how we can actually implement common course numbering and achieve this goal. The task force is very diverse. It's inclusive of representatives from across key constituency groups. We have faculty and CIO leaderships. We have both the president of the Academic Senate and the CIO Association co-chairing this particular task force. We have articulation officers and IT leaders, registrars, as well as our intersegmental partners. So we're very thankful to UC, CSU, and AICCU who have also contributed members to this task force so that we can have these conversations about how do we actually do this? How do we lay out a scaffolded approach for implementation that that allows us to work towards the goal, knowing that the time to get to full completion will take a bit longer. And so the work of the task force is underway. We have vibrant discussions. We're really laying out all of the things that have to be determined, how we have to change technology. Once we have a new common course numbering system, how can we try to streamline and automate as much as possible the sort of the re-review and re-articulation of thousands of courses. So we're thinking through all of these complexities, and this task force is really working by the end of this year to have a full implementation plan, a timeline for implementation, a better understanding of the resources the system will need to implement, so that we can speak back to state leadership and say, while we cannot say to you, we're going to have completed this by July of 2024, we have a clear plan of action, we have a clear set of timelines, and really to request support for that careful and scaffolded implementation. All right, moving on to the next topic. AB 928, so our Student Transfer Achievement Reform Act. So these are all interconnected. So as we think about common course numbering for our system, we cannot reap the full benefits of a common course numbering system if it's only for the community colleges, right? We can only realize the full benefit of common course numbering if it connects to course articulation and credit mobility across our segments of higher education. And Assembly Bill 928 seeks to help us to streamline those processes. Next slide, please. So what you will see here within AB 928 are really 3 provisions, and that's important to note because they are sometimes confused. You have the Associate Degree for Transfer Intersegmental Implementation Committee, which we call the AB 928 Committee for short. This is a statewide committee with representation from across the state. The California Community College Chancellor's Office has the pleasure of being the chair for the first 2 years of that committee, and I have had the pleasure of fulfilling that role for our office. And so I'll give you an update on the next slide on the goals of that committee and the work that we are doing. You also have the implementation of the singular lower division general education pathway. That work has been led by our faculty, right? By the academic senates of our 3 systems, CCC, UC, and CSU. And that work has been moving forward for over a year now. They are planning to finalize the framework by the end of this month. And that is another important step to get us closer to these streamlined pathways and clarity for our students to have this unified general education pattern. There is then yet another provision here that's important for us to note for the California Community College system, and that is the auto enrolling of students onto ADT pathways where an ADT pathway exists for their declared major. So that's an important transition for us. So we're sort of shifting from an opt-in to an ADT process to an opt-out of the ADT process. So that is, again, another area where we need to figure out a plan of action. How do you do that well in a streamlined fashion that does not confuse students? And how do we make sure that we give colleges guidance and support for that implementation? So you'll start to hear more about that coming up in the fall. How do we implement this process of auto-enrolling our students onto ADTs? Yes, Member Brown.
For item number 3, I've been curious, as the onus of sort of the software that's going to help facilitate that on the individual colleges and districts, or are we looking at this as a statewide CCC apply adjustment?
That is a great question, Member Brown. I would say we are looking at all possible options to streamline this process for students. All right, so as Dr. Hetz is leading that work around CCC apply, right, we can talk about what flags there. We need to talk about within colleges system and the process of maintaining education plans. What technology is used there? Is there something that can be naturally sewn into that process? So this will be another area where we will convene stakeholders, have some conversations, figure out how do these processes normally flow on campuses? How can we improve on those processes? And wherever possible, is there a technology solution to help to streamline the process? And then I would say more broadly, we have to think about this in the full constellation of tools that are used for transfer. What does this mean for assist? Right? What does this mean for common course numbering, right? How do we bring this all together so that again, we stop just layering tools on top of the complicated maze and get to more of a unified platform for students to engage in. It's a wonderful question. All right, last slide on this one, next slide. So what are the goals of this committee? This is really important work, Board of Governors, and we will agendize an opportunity to bring before the Board of Governors the draft goals that this committee is working towards, because the purpose of the work of this committee is to influence future state legislation. Right. So it's so important that we lean into this. We have discussions about this and we make sure that we influence this this work. So the committee's work is definitely intersegmental in nature. We have faculty, student, and staff representatives from UC, from CSU, from the CC system, as well as AICCU. We have other appointed members from the California Department of Education, from the Campaign for College Opportunity, a couple of gubernatorial appointments. And this group is coming together, working on these particular goals for 2023. The committee was given a set of goals to provide recommendations for 2023. We then have an additional set for 2024. So you see those here. To date, the committee has met 4 times since fall of 2022, and these are public Bagley King meetings, so you can definitely watch those and review the materials. So one goal here, how do we identify annual goals for increasing transfer rates and credential attainment in California, as well as closing racial gaps and regional equity gaps? So we're working on establishing goals there and recommendations. Second big area, proposing a new unit threshold for STEM degree pathways that meets the requirements for admission to CSU and UC. So this is an important flag towards the jobs of the future, which we know will be in the STEM area. We know there are typically more units required in a STEM degree. We've been given this task of, can we still meet the requirements of STEM preparation, but lower the units? And we are really asked in AB 928, and if you can't, explain why you cannot do that. So we're having some great discussions there, looking at models from other states to understand how we might innovate there around STEM degree pathways. And then last but certainly not least, this important goal on re-engaging ADT earners. I meant to mention this earlier, but didn't. When we look at how much we have increased the number of students who are getting an associate's degree for transfer, we then see this very interesting transfer melt that unfortunately happens in most institutions across the nation. You have a certain number of students who are completing an ADT, but then the number who then actually apply to transfer to CSU declines. The number who apply are admitted, but then actually matriculate, then further decline. So there's an interesting sort of dynamic there that we've seen in other places in the state where we lose students every step of the way. We want to understand why, what is happening. So part of the work that the AB 928 committee is doing under this goal of re-engaging ADT earners is reaching out with a survey to students to ask them directly, what happens? Why did you complete an ADT, but you didn't even apply for transfer? What was going on there, right? Was it about something that happened in your life? Was it personal? Was it financial aid? Asking students, you applied and you were accepted, but you didn't actually go. Why? Was that because you were redirected, right, to an institution you could not actually attend, or what's going on? So a lot of important work there to really try to understand what's happening when we lose students across the way. So we go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
I just want to ask you to also look at, prior to the associate degree for transfer, and one of the reasons for it was the number of students who completed an associate degree with the intent to transfer. We call them standing at the gate.
Mm-hmm.
And so is there a difference in those versus our associate degree for transfer? It'd be helpful to know what are the similarities and what might be the differences.
No, that's helpful. This is very helpful. Yes.
I know I brought this up in a previous meeting, and it's kind of a half question and comment more. So I know in regards to the why do students obtain the degree and then not transfer, I've worked with several students that have shared with me that they were completing their last course in the summer of whatever year that they wanted to transfer. And just because that course happened to be a core course, the CSU denied admissions, even though they've had every other unit every other transfer requirement met. So I know that I had previously mentioned that adjacent to these work groups, I think that's something to look at in this transferability of courses is the fact that if a student has met every requirement but has one class, they're registered in that class and they're going to complete that class before they actually would step foot on a campus. I don't think that that should be a reason to deny them admission to a college. And so I think that needs to be part of the conversation of looking at when we're talking about these core courses versus admission and transferability.
No, absolutely. Thank you for that. So many complex factors that come into play with course articulation and transfer. So this group has a set of draft goals. There is a website, AB Assembly Bill 928. So do take a look at the draft goals. And again, we'll agendize a time to have that conversation more thoroughly here and to get your feedback on those draft goals. All right, next slide. Let me move us along. Because we have quite a few items. Dual admission. So again, we're talking about various tools, programs, and initiatives that are all part of this ecosystem of equitable baccalaureate degree pathways with dual admission. Now we're talking about streamlining those intersegmental pathways. And this really is a further attempt to streamline those transfer pathways and overcome some of the transfer barriers that students face. The legislature established the dual admissions program, and this is a pilot program at the University of California and the California State University for first-time freshman applicants. Next slide, please. So what you're really seeing within this pilot program is a strategy to get more students on a clarified path through dual admissions. I like to say, imagine dual admissions as the ADT with the for real guarantee. That's what I like to describe it, right? So we know with the associate degree for transfer, there is guarantee of admission to a CSU, but we know with our very place-bound students, part of the issue is if redirection happens to a campus that I cannot attend, then that becomes a closed door and not a real opportunity for me. With dual admissions, you are seeing an opportunity, again, not here for transfer students, but for first-time freshmen who, for whatever reason, were ineligible. So the focus is really on underrepresented students who perhaps are at an under-resourced high school that doesn't have all the A through G requirements. Maybe there are financial challenges or geographical constraints, but the student was not admitted. They get this opportunity where the four-year institution is redirecting them to a community college. But the guarantee now is if you complete your general education requirements at this community college, you are guaranteed admissions to the CSU or UC of your choice in the program of your choice, right? So it's sort of pushing us a bit further in terms of the goals and vision of the ADT. I will not share more here because we do have special guests who will join me in a moment to share more about their programs from CSU and UC. So I will pause on that one, give my final update, and then invite our guests to join us. One is here with us physically, the other will join us virtually. So you'll hear more about dual admission and have an opportunity to ask questions directly of those representatives. Next slide, please. So closing out the updates here, again, this ecosystem of various levers that we have to achieve equitable baccalaureate degree completion, and that is community college baccalaureate degrees and completing the path at a community college. So when we think about all of these intersegmental efforts geared towards increasing equitable baccalaureate degree completion, we see this opportunity where students can actually do that within the community college system, okay, can begin and end that pathway here with us. And we do believe that having community college baccalaureate degrees is going to be an essential tool for meeting the state goal of that 70% degree and credential attainment. Next slide. So I don't need to give much background here on the BDPs. You are all well acquainted with the California Community College baccalaureate degrees and the goals here. We know that there's an important gap for our state when we think about the future of California, when we think about the degrees and the jobs of the future. We know that there is a gap here, and it's estimated in a study conducted by PPIC that we need to greatly increase the number of bachelor's degrees if we want to keep up with the demand within workforce. We also know that our baccalaureate degree programs, even though they are fairly young in their tenure, are showing very strong results, right? Community college baccalaureate degree completers have high retention, high graduation rates, and high employment rates. We are offering individuals who, per their own testimony, have stated that they would have not otherwise earned a baccalaureate degree. We're offering them a pathway that comes at a fraction of the cost, which we know finances are often a hindrance for our students. And we also see our community college baccalaureate degree completers working in their fields and earning upwards of $32,000 more a year, right? So these are transformative programs, a game changer for people's lives and their families.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm always a little skeptical of the term "as much as" when referring to money. Do we have what the average is for people who've completed their baccalaureate degree?
Range. So of course, you know, I put the high range on the slide, but the range is 15 to 32. But I would say either way significant, right? When in people's bottom lines, when eggs cost what, $50, eggs are ridiculous. When a dozen eggs will cost you $50 or something crazy, that $15,000 makes a big difference. So yeah, important impact for our students around a baccalaureate degree, but we see that across the nation, right? It remains true. The more education you can get, the more economic opportunity you have and the more career growth opportunities you will have. All right, last slide here on our baccalaureate degrees. This just gives you a snapshot, next slide, of the programs that we have in place now. We are excited to say the California Community College System now has 24 baccalaureate degree programs at 21 colleges. You see highlighted the 9 most recent that went through in cycle 1. We are in the midst of cycle 2. We received 29 applications. 14 of those applications move forward for the intersegmental review process. We have received some initial information from our 4-year partners where they have duplication concerns and are digging into that information. And so we're going to move expeditiously for those programs where there are no duplication concerns, move them forward, get them approved so that they can move forward. And for those programs where there are duplication concerns, as we experienced last year, there will be a bit of delay as we work through the process with our intersegmental partners, but we're excited that we continue to have this opportunity for our colleges. All right, Board of Governors, any thoughts, questions on all of those topics before we invite our guests to join us and focus in on dual admission? It's a lot. All right. Well, next slide, we are excited to have guests joining us. And one correction here that I see, we had a change in presenters for UC. So joining us virtually instead of Hanmi, we actually have Dr. Angelica Moore. She is the Associate Director of Policy and Communications in Student Affairs for the undergraduate admissions at the University Office of the President. So Angelica will be joining us virtually. And then we have Dr. April Gromo. April, are you here? Yes, here. Come on up, please. We have Dr. April Gromo joining us, Assistant Vice Chancellor at the California State University System for Enrollment Management Services. Thank you, April, for coming and spending your day with us. So again, we're going to hear from our intersegmental partners on their dual admissions programs. And we will start with you, April. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lowe, for the opportunity to be here today. The California Community Colleges remain a vital partner in providing a primary access point and launch pad for CSU undergraduate students. In the 21-22 academic year alone, the CSU enrolled more than 66,500 new transfer students. Establishing strong transfer pathways remains an important element of the CSU's larger strategy of expanding access and enrollment by recruiting and retaining students through to their 4-year degree and beyond. But the transfer population faces many unique challenges. As part of our longstanding commitment to the success of every student who aspires to achieve a CSU degree, I'm pleased to provide an overview of the new Transfer Success Pathway Dual Admissions Program and the launch of the CSU Transfer Planner. This program expands our continuing partnership with the community colleges to break down barriers and develop clear pathways, advisement, and support for transfer students. Next slide, please. The Transfer Success Pathway program will allow high school students graduating in 2023 and after more opportunities to attend a CSU. It is designated for a student entering a California community college to subsequently enter into an agreement with a specific CSU with the intent to transfer within 3 years. The student must complete either an ADT or an established course of study for transfer at a California community college. Through strategic outreach, we will focus first on students who applied to the CSU and were not CSU eligible, as well as those who were CSU eligible but redirected from their campus of choice and ultimately did not enroll at the CSU. We have also started to collaborate with California Community College Chancellor's Office, both high school and community college counselors, to share this new program. Next slide. Once the student fulfills the dual admissions requirements, the student will be admitted to their chosen university. If a major or university is impacted, the agreement will specify supplementary criteria for the student to meet, such as a GPA above the minimum or major specific coursework. Universities will also be able to control the number of agreements and delineate if local students and non-local students have different admission GPAs. Students participating in this program will receive support both from the CSU Chancellor's Office and their chosen CSU. Students will receive pre-admission counseling, direct access to CSU libraries, invitations to campus events, and financial aid information. This early connection for students will help them to connect with the CSU while still at the community college and begin the important formation of relationships with CSU representatives, which in turn will help in their transition to their respective CSU campus. Next slide. One of the support features of the new Transfer Success Pathway program is the new CSU Transfer Planner. The CSU will be launching the first phase of the planner available on a phone, tablet, or desktop this summer. The planner will allow students to complete a small eligibility questionnaire, research the 23 universities and degree programs available, review agreement requirements, and enter into one agreement with a Cal State University. Once the student provides their community college information, the students will be able to see their major prerequisites as outlined in the statewide articulation system, ASSIST. The project will also provide community college counselors the ability to receive secured reports with details of the students enrolled in the Transfer Success Pathway program. As we roll out the second phase of the Transfer Planner in early 2024, all students interested in transferring to the CSU will be able to enter and maintain academic data, track their transfer progress for general education and their transferable GPA, research career opportunities and majors, student reminders of when they may be ready to apply for transfer, and pre-population of their Cal State Apply application will also be added. We are excited about the opportunity to more closely partner with our California community colleges and work with students on their transfer pathway much earlier in their journey. Our community college transfer students are an integral part of our Cal State community, and we are excited that this new program will give us the opportunity to work more closely with them and more effectively guide them along supportive pathways to academic and career success. Thank you again for the opportunity to share information about the Transfer Success Pathway. You can find additional information at calstate.edu/transfer success.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, April. And then we have Angelica joining us virtually to share with us about the UC dual admission program.
All right, thank you for having me here today. I really would look forward to meeting you all in person at some future date. But I'm delighted to be here to share information on the UC dual admission program. I want to first off say that I have a fondness for transfer students, having worked with 16 years in my prior institution with transfer students. And as a first generation college student, I am very encouraged by the vision you have with your guided pathways, and look forward to those initiatives before us. Okay, next slide. All right. Dr. Lowe did introduce the bill. So I will just say that, you know, the UC is committed to access and excellence. And this dual admission program is another initiative that aligns with this effort. Next slide, please. So based on the language in the legislation and UC's existing admissions policies, we have developed a program with the following parameters. We recognize that these parameters will only reach a small subset of our applicants, but students must meet all criteria to be offered dual admission, including California residency, missing one or more A to G subject requirements, as mentioned early on by Dr. Lowe, and have at least a 3.0 UC GPA. The program eligible students will receive a conditional offer of admission to UC as a transfer student and preliminary financial aid information. They will be required to attend a California community college to prepare for transfer to UC, and upon completion of program requirements, students will be guaranteed transfer admission to a UC campus. Next slide. Although the benefit of a tag-based transfer admission, including our Pathways Plus program, is available to any student who wishes to transfer to UC from a CCC, the UC dual admission program focuses on equity by addressing the need for additional academic preparation for freshman applicants who did not complete UC's A to G requirements at the time of application. These students' academic profiles suggest that augmenting existing transfer programs with additional academic support and advising from the UC will help more of these students make a successful academic transition to a CCC and ultimately transfer to UC. Students who opt into the dual admission program will have access to transfer preparation support services, including UC advisors, library services where available, invitations to transfer events, and preliminary information about federal, state, and UC financial aid. These services will be available at the receiving campus or the UC campus nearest to the student's residence. Upon transfer, dual admission students will receive a waiver of application fee to the receiving campus, and if eligible, for the income-based application fee waiver, will also have the cost of application covered for 4 additional campuses. Next slide. Dual admission participants will be asked to create it and utilize the UC Transfer Admission Planner, a well-established tool in the transfer student's journey. Through UC TAP, UCOP will be able to communicate with students by sharing announcements, reminders, and general updates. Additionally, it will be used to track students' transfer and academic progress throughout their time at the community college. UC campuses have access to UC TAP, which serves as an advising tool for them. Ultimately, dual admission students will use the tool to submit their tag application to their dual admission campus. The UC TAP tool is also helpful for CCC counselors and advisors. Enhancements are underway for the CCC's UC TAP interface. Counselors and advisors will be able to see dual admission information on their UC TAP homepage, just as their students will see on their homepage. And a new report will be available that counselors can utilize to identify which students at their college are participating in the dual admission program. Next slide.
That is actually the final slide I have.
Okay, yes, so that concludes my introduction. And I did want to say that we do have an email address if you have any follow-up questions from this meeting, and that is ucdualadmission@ucop.edu. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Angelica. So Board of Governors, that was a wealth of information of a number of different programs and initiatives that are a part of this ecosystem of building pathways to equitable baccalaureate degree completion. So we welcome any questions for our guests, for myself. We also have a President of Academic Senate, Jenny May, who can join us for Q&A on Common Course numbering. She is also a member of the AB 928 committee as well. So we'll take your questions and comments.
Board members, any questions or comments for the panelists? I see Board Member Brown with her hand raised.
Yes, the first thing that I noticed on the two from the two presentations was the eligibility. I'm wondering, do we have numbers on how many students, if we looked at our entering freshmen from last year, for example, how many students would be eligible?
Yes, I will punt that over to Angelica and to April. I know their segments have been looking at what some of those numbers might look like.
So for the University of California, let's see, roughly preliminary information, roughly about 10,000 students are ineligible. But of those 10,000, those with a 3.0 GPA amount to less than that, somewhere around 3,600. And based on students' application and student self-reported, that number goes down a little bit too, because there are some, when the dust settles, that number is a lot less. So what we've done is just offered all of the ineligible with the 3.0 GPA an invitation to opt into the program, and we will have numbers to share after the June 1st deadline. So somewhere in the latter part of the summer. So it is a small subset.
Thank you for that question. So you may have noticed that the CSU has expanded the eligibility for this program quite broadly. So I can give you some preliminary numbers, but as this is a new program, we'll know more after the enrollment period, which is from August 1st to September 30th. So on average, the CSU denies students about 5,700 of them every year, every fall that apply to the CSU from a high school that aren't CSU eligible, either because of GPA or not meeting A through G requirements. We also know, based on National Student Clearinghouse data, that we have about 24,000 students who actually apply to a CSU, are admitted, and then attend a California community college instead. So those are the initial numbers, but this program is also open to students who did not apply to a CSU due to financial or academic reasons. So that's kind of the unknown number that we don't know yet.
Thanks, board members. Other questions or comments for the panelists?
So this is Pam Haynes. So I'm still a bit confused relative to those high school students. That 24,000 was a big number, and that got accepted and then chose to go to a community college. So have you teased? This is my first question. So have you teased out relative to their reasoning? Was it lack of a financial aid award, or it was a college that they got accepted to, but it was not in their general vicinity? Have you teased that piece of it out?
No, we don't have that information at this point in time. Those numbers are just based on National Student Clearinghouse data. So students don't accept for a number of reasons, but we don't have that data down to that detail.
Is that information that you're looking to get, or it doesn't actually sort of matter relative to the program?
It doesn't matter relative to this program.
Okay. And then my second question is to UC, the UC representative. Did I hear correctly that that once a student is accepted into the program, even though they may be, now these are students who are going to be on our community college campuses, but they're actually going to be supported relative to UC supports, technology wise, as well as counseling wise, as well as have an understanding of what the courses are they need to take in order to transfer. Is that correct?
That is correct. Now,
And so, oh, go, please
I'm
finish.
sorry. Yeah, so it's definitely in collaboration with CCC. We've been working from the ground up in implementation, meeting with the CCC CO and ensuring that, we're in the loop and foreseeable, being preemptive in how we're going to support these students through. But yes, a good portion of that transfer service support will be coming from the UCOP office with an administrator there as well, the campuses.
So thank you for clarifying, because I almost thought that there was no role for the campuses. So what do you foresee as the role of the campus relative to the support of these students that we will both hold in making certain that they get through the process?
So the campuses will be fully aware of who the dual admission students are. And the UCOP office will be helping the students navigate to, connect to the respective campus. But the campuses will also have these students in their pool to serve. And so they will be invited to advising appointments and also transfer events that are happening on the campuses as well. So it's sort of a wraparound service, for these students that's kind of spearheaded from, the UCOP as the intermediary.
Okay, thank you.
Board member, Hayden, if I can add to that, sorry, it is meant to be a partnership. So for the community colleges, we are to designate on our students' education plan that they are a dual admission student, right? And we've been having conversations with various stakeholders in our system, CIOs, CSSOs, academic senate, about for our part in the community colleges, how do we make sure that we are fully aware of this program, the supports for students? We do not want a campus to land on a student to land on our campus and we're not aware that they are in this program and what that means. So there are also requirements for our system around ensuring if they're eligible for fee waivers, they get those fee waivers, ensuring that they are designated as dual admission students on their educational program, and then having a point of contact at each one of our campuses for UC and CSU to work with to make sure that there's a streamlined transference of information.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you for that additional information. Our students directly out of high school need a lot of support that is physical to where they are located. Housing, food insecurity, all of those things will still exist for many of our students, regardless of whether they are accepted at a UC, CSU, or community college.
Thank you.
I
I saw
would just
board
add
member
that
Medina's hand raised.
I have a neighbor who's a community college transfer, and he did have a person at Solano who's works with the transfer program. So he had a person, his parents would come to me saying, give us advice because we don't know if he's getting the right information. So I was aware that at least at the community colleges, there is a person that's connected with UC to make sure the enrollments are right.
Thank you, board member Legrand. I think I saw board member Medina with his hand raised.
Actually, I have a two-part question. We're gonna have, if I could get a response from both the UC and CSU representatives. So pretty much, Hannah, how does these programs differ from an ADT? Because several students earn more than one ADT just to meet the CSU and UC requirements. That's my first question. I'd like to respond.
So I guess I can. Go ahead. I can start by saying our program is actually a tag-based transfer admission guarantee. So the, I guess, prescribed work that they will be doing will be based on what those academic prep coursework are for the tag.
So this program allows a student to actually designate the campus and the program that they are interested in applying to and being admitted to. So as long as they meet the agreement requirements within the 3 years, they will be guaranteed admission to that campus and that program. The ADT program, it's important to note that only students that are on an ADT similar pathway are guaranteed admission to a CSU, and they're not guaranteed admission to a specific CSU. Back when the ADT program started with AB 440, that is where the requirement for redirection came in. And then in 2017, 2018 California state budget, the CSU was asked to implement redirection for all students. So the CSU currently redirects first-time freshmen, upper division transfer, and ADT students now as of fall 2019.
No, my follow-up is, I have a concern that these requirements are different. They're reliable and they could change without notice. Obviously for the students, I want to make sure that, everything's set in stone or.
Yeah, that's why the students actually complete an agreement form. It's basically a contract. So the students are being told upfront, that's part of the launch of the CSU transfer planner, is the students get to review the campuses, the programs, and what the requirements are. And then since the CSU provides local admission priority for all of its campuses, students with local admission priority could have lower admission requirements than a student from out of the local area. So all of that will be provided within the agreement.
But from the UC, is there a response to that question?
Yes, so the student who opts in into an agreement with the campus, it's actually will be grandfathered into that particular major that they choose. Now, if there is a discontinuation of a major, then that campus will be working with that student to identify, another major for that student.
And that applies to all 9 campuses in the UC for undergrads?
It applies to the tag campuses, the 6 tag campuses.
Yeah. So it's like 6. Okay. Okay. So I just wondered, does this at all alter or change? Because university presidents, a lot, if you listen to their speeches or their talking points, they sound like Oprah. They, you get a college, you get it. So all of them are already offering guarantees. I know at least in the community I live in, if you're A through G, they guarantee admissions already. So does this change this? And, the challenge that we're seeing, it would be great to get data on the number of A through G eligible students who have met A through G requirements, whether it be through dual enrollment or what have you, how many of them are actually getting their classes, their core classes? Because they get admitted, but the problem is because of where their priority is, they don't get the classes that they need. So then they're not staying. And so it'd be great to kind of just see the information on, community college students that have went, that did they actually get into the core class is the question. Because it feels like the admissions letters are just going, but again, students aren't getting the classes that they're looking for.
Yeah, I'll jump in there first, Member Williams. One of the key distinctions is with this pilot program is the focus on students who, for whatever reason, are ineligible, right? So think about students who actually have not completed the A through G requirements for whatever reason. This is a pathway that's particularly focused on underrepresented students who don't have access to a full A through G curriculum at their high school, things of that nature. So that's one distinction. But to your point on data, I would say it's going to be forthcoming, right? We are very excited to say that we finally, the state California Community College Chancellor's Office, have data sharing agreements with our 4-year partners with UC and CSU. So that's going to allow us to close some of these data gaps and further fill out the picture of what happens after transfer, what happens at our 4-year institutions. And so you can expect to see data along those lines in the not too distant future, but certainly anything our partners want to add.
Yeah, so I'll just add that through our the CSU Graduation Initiative 2025, we have a number of initiatives focused on not only transfer students, but all of our students making sure that they receive the classes that they need. All students are provided a 2-year roadmap to graduation as a starting point. Many of our students can't take 2 years. I would also say our graduation rates at the 2-year after transfer are very high and increasing every year. So there's a lot of initiatives within the CSU very aligned with the community colleges as far as closing equity gaps and increasing graduation rates and meeting students where they are.
Last question, like from a branding standpoint, was there a reason you all decided to call it, or why this was called a dual admissions versus dual enrollment? Because some people get confused with, they confuse concurrent enrollment and dual enrollment. Will this same thing happen because of the names?
That is a valid question, Member Williams. Dual admission is what the program has been denoted as in legislation. So that sort of is part of the impetus. We have our partners attacking it in different ways. For CSU, they've sort of come up with this name. What is the name for the CSU program?
It's Transfer Success Pathway.
It's a transfer success pathway. But one of the things that we've been doing is we've looked at dual admissions and what it's going to take to implement, having that conversation with various stakeholder groups. Is we have organized some feedback for our four-year partners that we will be sending their way in the next week or so with some of those considerations, right? How do we streamline timelines where possible? How do we streamline processes where possible? We have raised that flag around the confusion between dual enrollment and dual admissions, and then really flagging, okay, in our marketing and our communication, how do we avoid that confusion for families, right? And for students, that those are two separate and distinct things.
Thank you, colleagues. Any more questions or comments?
I don't know if you can see me. So one last question. We hear that these programs are coming and we get really excited, right? Same thing happened with the ADT. We hear the word guarantee and everyone gets really excited. And then we start to hear all of the eligibility rules and all of the stipulations and all of that. And then it starts whittling away at what's possible. So I'm wondering now, knowing that there are only going to be 6 UCs participating, that sort of information needs to be very upfront, as opposed to just calling it a UC, but to say to these 6 UCs. I think that's critically important, because then there starts to be a level of distrust when we hear the word guarantee. So my follow-up question to both systems is, are there any majors that are excluded?
Angelica, do you want to jump in on that for UC?
Well, I can't identify exactly which majors are excluded, except that we have a longstanding transfer admission guarantee program, the TAG program itself, where those lists will discern which ones are capped or whatnot for each application cycle. And so it does change, but it is upfront to any student who, which we encourage to have a UC TAP account. That's where they can see the full list for the term that they are interested in, pursuing.
From a CSU perspective, the campuses are in the process of evaluating the majors. All 23 CSUs will be participating in the Transfer Success Pathway program, but there are some majors that they may not offer through TSP. So one of the ones that we've talked about probably most is nursing, because it's very hard to predict 3 years from now what the admissions requirements will be for a nursing program. But each campus is doing that, and then students will be able to search within the CSU Transfer Planner for all the open programs, looking at it from accounting, looking at it from a campus perspective to see what is available to them.
Well, just given the state of California, talks about equal opportunity a lot. How is it that only 6 of the campuses could participate in this? Yeah, for the UCs. Like the other ones opt out, or like how can they say not be participating?
No, this is not relegated to the dual admission program itself. It's the transfer admission guarantee that's been around for, decades. And those three campuses had historically been those that had, didn't have the capacity like to grow and or had a number of majors, more so than the others that were capped. So that situation, remains. And so it's not directly related to dual admission, but more so the campus's capacity.
They can't just take less students from other places and take California community college students so they can participate?
Well, California community college students are a priority. I mean, and it's a part of our 2-to-1 goal in terms of accepting 2 transfers for every one. 1 transfer for every 2 freshmen. So we continue to do that, and I see that as making transfer a priority as well. But the demand has grown over this past 5 years, even for spaces.
I see Board Member Anderson has his hand raised.
Can you tell us what are the 3 campuses that don't allow it?
So it would be Berkeley, UCLA, and San Diego.
And so they just, because they're impacted, they just said, we're not going to participate in the program.
In the guarantee program. But it just so happens that they are the 3 campuses, at least 2 of them, 2 out of 3 that actually admit the larger percentage of transfer students for the University of California. So they're actually admitting a lot more transfers than what those campuses that are offering a guarantee are admitting.
When you say admitting transfer, are those coming from the community colleges?
Yes.
So per percentage, then it's higher at UCLA and Berkeley, even though they do not participate in the program.
Yes, and this information is available at the UC Info Center if anybody's interested in kind of drilling down into campus per campus enrollments.
47, okay, thank you.
Just add something to that, having again did admissions at Berkeley. Because we can't take as many freshmen because we just are not getting the numbers from the state from as far as the budget. They pay for about 19,200 students, I think, when I was there. So transfers are how we fill that gap because we don't have to do as many gateway courses because transfer students have already taken those courses. So that's why those more impacted campuses tend to take more transfer students because they're not worried about freshman and sophomore enrollment numbers.
Thanks. So I'm hearing a little bit from my colleagues, some reticence. So I just want to say, I obviously like every sort of tool that we can have to increase our pathways. But the CSU representative said something interesting. It's hard to predict in 3 years. It's exceedingly difficult for our students at community colleges to predict where they will be in 3 years. And this is yet another example of not having full portability for our ADT, in which even at the front of this program, we have CSU with a kind of broader interpretation of eligibility compared to UC. And our students, more than any, really need the flexibility because they're place-bound, because they have economic constraints. And so it's just disappointing to me that even at the beginning of this program, our students have to choose. And they could choose a path that ultimately leads them nowhere. Hopefully, these agreements will have alternatives available to them when they have impacted campuses. But we also know that the choices for our students are exceedingly limited when their home campus is not available. With that, I'll open it up to any comments from the public on this item.
The public comment period on item 6.4 is now open. We will begin with public comments in Sacramento and then move on to virtual comments. For virtual attendees, please use the raise hand feature. Press *9 if you are calling in. You will have 2 minutes. I will hand it over to Vice President Aguinaldo to begin with public remarks in Sacramento.
Thank you very much. We have two public comments on this matter. We have first Jenny May and then second Larry Galizio.
Good afternoon, President Costa, Vice President Aguinaldo, Chancellor Gonzalez, and members of the board. I am Jenny May, President of the Academic Senate for California Community Colleges. In regard to AB 1111 Common Course Numbering, you should note there are 116 community colleges, 23 CSU campuses, and 9 UC campuses with undergraduate programs. So curricular alignment can only be effective where curricular alignment is appropriate. Common general education courses, common transfer degree pathway courses as identified in CID and ASSIST. AB 1111 is the fourth bill since 1983 to require common course numbering. The first three were all found to be cost prohibitive. However, CID is the result of the third bill, SB 1450, which began in 2007. Building on the structures and processes of CID, which includes the creation, review, and updates of the TMCs, will be key to successful implementation of common course numbering. And a note on AB 928, the framework and standards for the singular lower division general education pathway, now known as the California General Education Transfer Curriculum, or CalGETC, was approved by the Intersegmental Committee of the Academic Senates, or ICAS, this morning. And I'll be sending out a press release and some more information as soon as I have time. Thank you.
President Costa, Vice President Aguinaldo, Dr. Gonzalez. First, I forgot to thank you, Dr. Gonzalez, for your mention of former League Trustee Board President Ken Brown. Really appreciate that. And channeling Trustee Brown, first, I know he'd be very disappointed in the performance of the Lakers. Second, he'd be equally, if not more frustrated that right now, for access to a community college baccalaureate degree for in-demand workforce degrees, especially for place-bound students, that Florida, not California, offers far more opportunities for community college baccalaureate degrees. I know this is a sensitive topic, and I think everybody here, certainly our UC and CSU partners, have the best interests in Californians in mind. And these are challenges, and I'm very confident that we will all find a way to coexist peacefully, so we're all serving Californians as public institutions of public sectors of our institutions of higher education. I do want to note that, if we don't, there are predatory for-profits that are very happy to fill the vacuum if we're not offering these types of degrees, especially for our place-bound students. I mean, the recent history in California is very clear. We understand change can be frightening. It's politically sensitive, but the only way to advance the roadmap, the vision for success, for more equitable economic and social mobility and these opportunities, the baccalaureate degree is one small part. That's the other thing, is it's not going to have a major impact on the CSUs or the UCs enrollment. It really is not. So we need to be less focused on the needs of the institutions and more on the state and the people of California. Thank you.
President Costa and Vice President Aguinaldo, we do have a virtual hand raised. Marissa Johnson, you have control of your mic and can address the board.
Thank you, President Costa, members of the board. My name is Marissa Johnson, providing comment on behalf of the Campaign for College Opportunity. We would first like to thank Vice Chancellor Lowe for her leadership and dedication to the implementation of these student-centered reforms. Stakeholders from across the system and state have come together to take significant steps towards clarifying the transfer system for California community college students. This includes all the work that has been done and continues to take shape through both implementation and active legislation to elevate the ADT pathway. and guarantee admission to both the CSU and UC. While much progress has been made, there is still much work left to be done to finish implementation and see the benefits of the system's hard work. We urge the Board of Governors to remain attentive and directly monitor progress on the implementation with fidelity of these items. As leaders of the largest higher education system in the nation, it's critical that the Board of Governors remains committed to the progress that these programs intend to create for the millions of students served by the California community colleges. Thank you for your time.
There are no other virtual hands raised.
Great, thank you very much. We will move on to item 6.5, which is our Career Technical Education State Plan, and that will be presented by Interim Vice Chancellor Sanchez.
Good afternoon, Board President Costa, Vice President Aguinaldo, members of the board, and Chancellor Gonzalez. I am Sandra Sanchez, the Interim Vice Chancellor for Workforce within the Office of Equitable Student Learning Experience and Impact. Today, I will be co-presenting with my colleague, Peter Callis, who is the Division Director of the Career and College Transition Division at the California Department of Education. Today's presentation is to update you on the progress that we have made with the state plan for career technical education. Next slide, please. Today, we're going to share with you the framework, process, and tasks that we worked on together as a state team to finalize the plan that has been approved by the California Pathways Joint Advisory Committee, or CLAPJAC, as we like to call them. I would like to begin by thanking the members of the Joint Advisory Committee, including the committee's chair and Board of Governors member Rawlings, member Grande, member Williams. And all three of them were instrumental in guiding and informing our work and the final product that was approved by the CLAPJAC at their March 2023 meeting. Next slide, please. The broad intent of the state plan is to ensure that we prioritize the needs of our students and that our system is preparing students for in-demand skills. And equally important is that we keep a pulse on the advancements in technology so that we can adapt our educational and training programs to the new skills that our students will need to know in order to be successful in the workplace. We also wanted to produce a high-quality plan that is actionable and measurable. Therefore, we organize our scope of work in 4 key areas shown here across the top, with equity and access being foundational threads throughout. The 4 key areas include targeting in-demand careers with an emphasis on high-road occupations by engaging and collaborating with industry, effective delivery and support, creating and expanding competency-based education, online instruction, work-based learning opportunities, and adult education for displaced workers. Utilizing data to inform regional investments, such as economic forecasts and aligning workforce training data systems to capture cradle-to-career readiness. And of course, multi-system alignment, strengthening K-12 and community college systems. The 5 strategies outlined on the vertical column, career pathways, regional partnerships, dual enrollment, work-based learning, and CTE teacher and faculty preparation, represent key strategies we will use because they are effective and efficient ways of addressing the needs related to the 4 key areas. These cross-cutting strategies are also based on evidence-based practices that we know work in high-quality career technical education programs. Next slide, please. We enlisted Jobs for the Future as our implementation partner, and with them, we have outlined 4 phases of the work deliverables. Phase 1 focused on building a shared understanding of the background and the context for the development of the plan. Phase 2 included the process to draft, finalize, and have the CLAPJAC adopt the plan, which, as I mentioned, they did in the March 2023 meeting. We are currently in phase 3, which includes launching the state plan through a state and regional communication strategy. And finally, phase 4 includes developing a set of metrics to measure progress and achieve results. Next slide, please. Phase 1 began with a planning session with the California Workforce Pathways Joint Advisory Committee, a review of key initiatives, strategic plans, and other background documents, as well as 13 focus groups consisting of participants from the community college system, community-based organizations, students, businesses, and of course, our K-12 partners. Next slide, please. From those meetings, 5 main themes emerged. from phase 1, as you can see from the slide, focus groups. Participants asked us to help them understand and define how we build an equitable workforce, and they asked us to continue our efforts to educate the public on what career technical education means for our state. We presented the key takeaways and an outline of the plan to the QAPJEC, and their guidance and feedback also informed the development of the plan itself. Next slide, please. After drafting a plan, we opened a 45-day public comment period and created a dedicated webpage for the public to submit written comments. We received 314 comments from 84 individuals. The plan was revised to incorporate salient public comments and then taken to the Joint Advisory Committee for their final approval. Finally, during this phase of the work, we created a state and regional communications plan, which will be the foundation for the third phase of the work. So now I'm going to briefly provide you with a quick overview of what's in the state plan, and it includes 1, a bold vision for equity and excellence in career education, focus on a system that centers equity and is flexible and adaptable to meet the needs of learners and the needs of the state's economy. Our key priorities and strategies and themes, our short-term and long-term goals, and finally, a call to action as well as examples from the field that demonstrate what we are setting out to do is actionable and achievable. Next slide, please. In the next 1 to 3 years, our plan focuses on 4 short-term goals, including better use of data to support equitable outcomes, the expansion of work-based learning opportunities in all of our regions, the growth of dual enrollment so our students coming out of high school know a college degree or certificate is within reach, and finally, understanding the main causes of career technical education and faculty shortages and exploring strategies to address those shortages. As a living document, this plan will be periodically revisited and updated to reflect the evolving context, priorities, and needs of the communities that we serve. So now I'm going to hand it over to my presentation to my colleague, Pete Callis, who will provide a brief overview of phases 3 and 4 of our work.
Great. Thank you, Sandra. I'll take the final 2 minutes of our presentation to share with you that we've begun phase 3 of our work plan, which includes outreach to our stakeholder community. The goal is to ensure that all stakeholders, including college faculty, K-12 teachers, and our partners in workforce development, are all aware of the plan and how they can contribute to its success. There are 2 sets of strategies in place. One, to engage state-level stakeholders, and another to engage regional-level stakeholders. For state-level stakeholders, our objective is to ensure state leaders understand their role in supporting regional implementation and the plan itself is sustainable over the long term. For our regional stakeholders, the outreach is designed to guide them as establishing cross-sector pathways and how to adopt a plan to specific regional contexts. We will have 10 statewide convenings and are being planned to support regional implementation. Next slide, please. One more, please. One more. There we go. The 4th and final phase of our work plan is expected to begin in November of 2023 and to be completed in March of 2024. The primary goal is to develop a set of metrics on outcomes for the plan. The set of metrics will include key benchmarks aligned to the priorities in the state plan. It will draw on existing metrics and indicators, including Perkins 5 indicators that are already tracked by the Chancellor's Office and CDE, as well as identifying new indicators. On behalf of the CDE and State Superintendent Thurman, thank you for your time and support through the development of this collaborative approach to achieving our state's education priorities. This concludes our presentation. Thank you for your time today. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Colleagues, questions or comments for the panelists?
I'll jump in with a comment. I just want to thank the staff of both agencies and all the work they've done on it. I've been chair for a little while now as we've done this work. I know some members, I think Member Costa and Member Haynes and others have served on this Joint Advisory Committee before. And those of you who have know, there are a lot of different programs with a lot of different funding sources and a lot of different metrics that go into this. And one of the things we saw fairly early on was the need to maybe standardize the forms, standardize the timelines, just really to weave these programs together so that you're not just looking at this program or that program, whether it be strong workforce or CTIG or whatever, and taking them in silos, right? The idea here is that we take CTE as a holistic educational pathway for our students, make it align with itself better, and then with our K-12 community college and CSU UC partners better. And so this is the first step of that. So I'm really looking forward as we move forward to get these metrics done, and really spend the time listening to folks in the field and see what they need, because that's something we haven't maybe done as well as we need to in the past. So I'm really looking forward to the work.
Can I? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. No,
Well, I thank you for Williams. I just wanted to add that we just heard an amazing presentation about the value of dual enrollment and the ways that we can leverage it. And this particular plan, the CTE plan for our state, embeds K-12 and community colleges in such a collaboration that we will truly make a lot of progress in helping path our students from as early as fifth grade into middle school opportunities for career technical education into high school, and then clearly into our community colleges. A lot of work went into the state plan. This is not a plan to be taken lightly. It took us more than the pandemic to put it into the way that you're seeing it today. And I can't thank you enough, Peter, Sandra, for making it happen. So thank you. To you, Member Williams.
Just want to read a statement that I was just writing last night about going through the process. So as a member of the committee that reviewed the CTE plan, I just really want to express my appreciation for the comprehensiveness and the visionary ideas that are in the plan. I want to specifically commend the chair of the committee, Member Rollins, for his exceptional leadership throughout the process. Your guidance and expertise were instrumental in shaping the plan and allowing us to dig deep and really have some robust conversations. And I just really want to point out the aspect of the plan that was of interest to me, which was the work-based learning experience for the high school students. I think that these experiences are invaluable for preparing students for the workforce. It also allows them to apply their classroom learning or their classroom knowledge in real-world setting and developing the employability skills that they need. I will continue to advocate for paid work-based learning experiences at any opportunity that I get. And just want to again and say thank you to Member Rollins, to all of the members of the committee and the team for their writing. And I do believe that it fits our equity plan, our commitment to equity and access. And like I said, work-based learning is a major component that will really help our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, any other questions or comments for the panelists?
So if I may, so I just want to, having been on this committee and have a deep affection for the work that everyone's done, this has been really Herculean. As we talked about, this is about everyone having the same titles about what we're trying to do, but really braiding all of our work together, and it's taken a while. And so I want to commend everyone for staying the course. I like the plan. So let me say that really up front. It is a doable plan. And now what I'm about to say is to ensure, because this is a big state with a lot of K-12 and a lot of community colleges. And we have the best motives at our disposal, which we continue to talk about equity. Equity is only as good as it actually happening for our students of color, in particular, those least to be in some of these programs, which are our Native American brothers and sisters and our Black brothers and sisters. And so there has to be intentionality, and there has to be urgency, and there has to be at the very ground level where the decisions are being made the willingness to take chances on our students. And so I'm looking forward to that. And I'm also looking forward to having the data that says we're moving in that direction. But thank you so much for doing this work.
Thanks, Board Member Haynes. Any other questions or comments of the board? I've also served on this committee, and I have to say I agree with Pam. I really like the plan, and I really like that you just address head on that often, you know, and we've heard this before, that CTE is kind of the other or the afterthought in our colleges, that there's a real bifurcation in our system. And, you know, honestly, based on the previous item, we also have tremendous opportunity. The transfer system is messy. It's complicated. If anybody's been on assist lately, it will make you go cross-eyed because it's so complicated. And because we own this in partnership with K-12 and in partnership, we have the ability to make it a lot simpler. And I honestly believe there's tons of opportunity for people here in CTE that certainly we didn't talk about when I was graduating high school. So I commend you on this plan. And I think, you know, it's ambitious, it's bold. It uses data in ways maybe we haven't envisioned. And I'm really looking forward to getting reports on where we are in our implementation of this plan. So thank you very much for bringing this to the board. With that, I'd like to open it up to any questions or comments from members of the public.
The public comment period on item 6.5 is now open. We will begin with public comments in Sacramento and then move on to virtual comments. For virtual attendees, please use the raise hand feature, pressing *9 if you are calling in. You'll have 2 minutes. I will hand it over to Vice President Aguinaldo to begin with public remarks in Sacramento.
Thank you very much. We just have one comment from Eric Kalimagi.
Push the button. Good afternoon, President Costa, Vice President Aguinaldo, Chancellor Gonzalez, and members of the board. I'm Eric Kalimagi. I'm the president of the Community College Association, which is the branch of the California Teachers Association that deals with community college matters. The state's CTE plan's key priorities and major themes are not controversial. But compared to the previous 2008 to 2012 plan, which ran 240 pages plus another 100 pages or so of appendices, the 19-page plan is at best skeletal. CCA was surprised by the brevity when the original draft came out last year. Our CTE leaders, along with many 7th through 12th grade CTE faculty from the California Teachers Association, had several meetings and spent a number of hours creating a set of public comments during the development of the plan. The CTE plan is supposed to be a strategic plan, identifying key priorities and strategic objectives for the next several years. Almost none of our comments, or indeed anyone else's, were in the final document. Among other things, CCA remains concerned that this plan does not include any action on addressing CTE faculty shortages. CTE faculty are among the oldest faculty in the system on average, and yet this plan says that we will collect data, develop strategies, and develop a plan. Our plan is literally a plan to plan that does not discuss or identify the role of community colleges in preparing candidates for CTE K-12 programs or in supporting high school programs. A strategic plan is the detailed explanation of how resources will be focused to make progress towards goals. It's not clear to me what is strategic about this plan. The next activity is going to be to assist regions to implement local responses. Our hope is that administration will work with faculty leaders, including CTA's CTE faculty leaders, to address these concerns. Thank you.
President Costa, we have no more in-person comments and there are no hands raised at this time.
Thank you so much. Our next item on the agenda is item 6.6, our state and federal update with Vice Chancellor O'Brien.
Good afternoon, board members. David O'Brien, Vice Chancellor of Government Relations, with our state and federal GR update. We can move to the next slide. It's quite a substantive update. So starting off with what we like to call, or we're calling it slide one lately in government relations, because it's a sort of constantly rotating slide that we're always updating with the latest information. But the sort of up to the minute update, we're currently tracking 187 pieces of legislation that are active, that have an impact on higher education, of which we have flagged 81 as what we call tier one, meaning they're the most likely to have a direct impact, the highest profile bills, the ones that we spend the most amount of our time on. Last week, the Assembly and Senate Appropriations Committees finished up the phase of the legislative session when they consider what's called the suspense file, which you may hear about sometimes in political media. It's all legislation that has a cost impact that's estimated above a certain amount. It's at least $150,000. And they consider all these bills at once, and it's where a lot of bills get sort of weeded out and die off in the process. And we did see a rather measurable reduction in the number of legislation we're following as part of that suspense process. We're approaching the deadline, June 2nd, by which bills have to pass out of their house of origin or first house. So we'll continue to keep the board updated throughout the process. I do have a few updates to share regarding our sponsored legislation. I apologize that it's not on the slide, but because these were sort of late breaking updates, they'll just be a verbal update. I will start with the somewhat disappointing news first, which is that Assembly Bill 680, our legislation to streamline the transfer process for students seeking AB 540 status, including undocumented status, was defeated or held on what we call suspense last year. The reasons for this being somewhat opaque because the suspense process it notoriously moves very fast and a lot of things happen behind the scenes. But as you know, of course, in a year when, as Dr. Navarrete presented, we have a $30+ billion budget shortfall, any bills identified as having any significant amount of costs to the state are subject to a high degree of scrutiny. And our legislation, as you recall, board members, that you approved both in last year's system budget and legislative request and as last year's sponsored bill, SB 1141, it was tagged as having some cost estimate because it technically made it cheaper for students to attend UC and CSU and pay the in-state tuition rate. So therefore, from a very literal sort of accounting perspective, you could argue that there are costs and as such, it was not advanced this year. We're disappointed, of course, but very, very heartened by the coalition we put together. We had a very strong coalition supporting that legislation. And I want to just remind the board that a lot of the legislation, particularly related to expanding access to higher education for undocumented students, failed many, many times before it was finally enacted. The California DREAM Act that we talked about earlier that expanded state financial aid to AB 540 students, that was actually first introduced in 2001 with AB 540, and it took 10 full years. Where it was introduced every year, sometimes vetoed by the governor, sometimes defeated through the process before it was finally enacted in 2011. So we will continue to try, we will continue to press forward on the issue of equity and access for our undocumented student population. The good news on the other two, save the good news for the last two, Assembly Bill 1370, our sponsored legislation to modernize the economic and workforce development program, continues to advance with no opposition or no votes whatsoever. It actually unanimously passed the Appropriations Committee last week and will move to the Assembly floor next. And Assembly Bill 1542, our sponsored legislation to provide equitable compensation to student members of the Board of Governors, has now passed the Assembly floor unanimously, where it moves on to the Senate for consideration. So I want to thank all of you as board members and your advocacy. Many of these were ideas that came forward from you, and we're pleased to see that 2 of our 3 are advancing. All right, next slide, please. We have several bills with new positions I want to present. I will try to be brief, but since the last meeting of the Board of Governors, we have adopted a support position on 8 new bills, a support if amended position on 1 new bill. We've lumped them into themes as we like to do. The first 3 here relate to supporting student basic needs and expanding financial aid opportunities. So these are all bills that we're advancing with a support position. Assembly Bill 607 would require colleges to prominently display online the estimated cost of all required course materials for at least 3/4 of the total numbers of courses that are available in the online campus schedule. And that 3/4 number has to do with the fact that We know that courses sometimes do change late in the process. There are updates to materials. It's not always easy to estimate in advance, but we find this legislation aligned to the work of our burden-free instructional materials task force, formerly known as Zero Textbook Costs, because it increases cost transparency and helps students make informed choices about the total cost of attendance. Assembly Bill 928, which is not the same as the AB 928 we just heard Dr. Lowe talking about, where they recycle the bill numbers every year, would require our partners at the California Department of Social Services to annually update their CalFresh data dashboard. If you're wondering why we're advancing legislation related to CalFresh, as we know, data on college student participation in the CalFresh program has been severely lacking for many years. That's something that's come up in multiple work groups and reports. And so we're generally supportive of efforts that at least give us more data about which students are accessing CalFresh benefits and what the barriers are as we continue to work to break down those barriers. Lastly, in this group of bills, Assembly Bill 1400 by Assemblymember Isaac Bryan and sponsored by the California Student Aid Commission would redirect some funds from what's called the College Access Tax Credit Fund, sort of an experimental program that started many years ago to top up the Cal Grant B program, but never really panned out the way the legislature intended it to. This bill would redirect those funds to community college students who transfer to HBCUs, historically Black colleges or universities. This has been an issue that's come up repeatedly. Multiple educational equity groups have raised it. Because they are technically out of state, the state of California does not provide any state-funded financial aid to students who transfer to out-of-state institutions. But we know that a large number of our Black and African-American students report there's just a myriad of benefits to attending HBCUs, including social, cultural, economic, and educational benefits. And a lot of them do come back to California afterwards, hence the reason why we have a memorandum of understanding with those HBCUs. And so this legislation, which we're pleased to support, would redirect funds from the College Access Tax Credit Fund to create a new state financial aid stipend for community college students that transfer to an HBCU if it's one that we have a memorandum of understanding with, and if the student indicates they intend to return to California after getting their degree. Next slide, please. A couple of pieces of legislation that are still moving that support our undocumented students that we're supporting include Assembly Bill 1393, which would create a new pilot program intended to mirror CalFresh for California DREAM Act students. You heard us discussing some of the barriers earlier that undocumented students face. One of them is that they're not eligible for federal support or assistance programs, including federal financial aid or programs like CalFresh, which is of course funded as SNAP at the federal level. So this stems out of a work group that the Student Aid Commission convened that the Chancellor's Office sat on that explored ways to expand access to food assistance and reduce food insecurity. And one of the recommendations was to create a sort of counterpart funded by state funds that would be accessible to undocumented students, and this bill would do that. Senate Bill 467 has to do with CTE programs, which we just heard about, specifically some challenges that students face being placed in things like clinical placements and others because they don't have a social security number. There is longstanding legal interpretation that the students are supposed to be placed into these opportunities if they have what's called an individual tax identification number or ITIN, but we're still hearing about some challenges about students getting those placements. So this bill would explicitly provide that an ITIN is the same as the social security number for purposes of these clinical and other CTE placements. Next slide, please. Continuing on this theme, we are supporting Assembly Bill 91 by Assemblymember David Alvarez, which specifically has to do with exempting from the payment of non-resident tuition. So this is AB 540 status, essentially, a specified number of students who meet income eligibility criteria and reside within 45 minutes of the California-Mexico border on the Mexico side. The idea being that these are what's called cross-border scholars, a lot of students that contribute to the regional economy, what's called the San Diego and Imperial Counties Community College Association. We love our acronyms, SADICA. Because it is limited in scope and does expand access to higher education for those students, we find it's consistent with our priorities to make college more affordable. And we're pleased to thank Assemblymember Alvarez for his leadership on this issue. Assembly Bill 368 would make just some clarifying changes to what we call CCAP, College and Career Access Pathways, which is one of the dual enrollment pathway programs we have to ensure that we're expanding program participation among underrepresented students, including priority enrollment and other such changes, but largely clarifying and technical changes. All right, next slide. One that's very much related to a topic we discussed here today, and as such gets its own slide, is one that you may have heard about. It's gotten some local media attention. Assembly Bill 1749 by Assemblymember Kevin McCarty is the very high profile legislation to require the UC to participate in the ADT program, which we were of course just talking about. No need to repeat some of what we just heard about. We all know that the ADT pathway is designed for students who are expected to be guaranteed admission to a CSU with junior standing after they complete 60 units of required coursework. You know, you may recall a couple of years ago when Assembly Bill 928 was being debated, the Chancellor's Office did express some concerns about the fact that we didn't feel that it did enough to create guarantees for students going to UC since it was so focused on the ADT. The reason why we decided to move forward with supporting Assembly Bill 1749 is that it does provide that UC component. It does provide students with the guarantee that's too long been lacking, will reduce confusion for students wishing to transfer to both, and very much aligned with our priorities around developing and implementing a student-centered transfer ecosystem with a consistent and guaranteed transfer pathway. There are, of course, some questions related to implementation of this legislation. It's still fairly early in the process, so we recognize that issues like the fact that the UC is not typically subject to most state legislative oversight, that it's got an aggressive timeline for expansion, all of those will still have to be worked out. In taking a support position, our intent is merely to continue to advance this dialogue, right, and really draw that line in the sand for what our students need. Next slide, please. One piece of legislation that we've adopted a position of what we call support if amended is Senate Bill 307 by Senator Angelique Ashby. This is a bill that would extend the middle class scholarship program to community college students who are current or former foster youth. Specifically, and I could really, this gets very technical, but specifically a component called Middle Class Scholarship 2.0, not making this up, I didn't name it, legislature did, that addresses the total cost of attendance through what's called a last dollar scholarship to low-income students. Now, one of the inequities about the middle class scholarship program that the Board of Governors has been very vocal about, and that the Chancellor's Office has been very vocal about, is that it's only been available to UC and CSU students until now. Last year, for the first time, it was extended to community college baccalaureate students, but the overwhelming majority of community college students have never seen and will never see any benefit under the middle class scholarship program. This bill represents the first sort of foot in the door towards changing that, towards something that we hope can be expanded to all community college students at some point. And furthermore, what it does is it addresses the total cost of attendance, which is a term we hear us use for acknowledging that the cost of tuition is not the greatest driver of what our students face. It's housing, it's textbooks, it's food and other issues. And so by extending it to a limited population in community colleges, this bill creates what we hope is the framework for ultimately expanding and providing full financial aid equity to all community college students. The reason we've adopted a support if amended position is just that it's got a fairly aggressive implementation timeline. We're aligned with our colleagues at the Student Aid Commission in asking that it be implemented no earlier than the 2025-26 academic year, because again, this is a program our colleges have never had. They've never been able to offer it. And so recognize that it'll take some time to get off the ground. The next few items are on federal updates, so I will go through those and then see if there are any questions.
Actually, David, before you leave the statements, can we just, I have my usual quick list of just questions about some of these bills. On the AB 395, which requires courses to be for graduation to be taught every year. What's do we have a position on that, and what is the system at large? Think of that.
Yeah, so that's a rather expansive and complex piece of legislation. We don't have a position at this time. We've had some discussions with the sponsors and the author's office, and we're very much inclined to agree with the goals that they're seeking, but want to just provide some further assistance about how to continue to refine the language on that one. So no position at this time, but we're very much aware of it and have been engaged in conversations around it.
And then AB 506, which is the ethnic studies alignment with CSU.
Again, we're monitoring that issue. That's one that Dr. Lowe, I know, and her team have been working with partners at the CSU on. Our general inclination is to prefer things to be worked out intersegmentally before legislation is needed. But that's one that one of our districts is carrying LACCD specifically, I think, because they felt that they wanted to sort of, force the issue in that arena. And I think we're continuing to monitor it and don't have a position at this time.
Okay. And the last one is AB 1190, the compensation for part-time office hours.
I believe that one may have been held on suspense, so I get a hall pass for not having to answer questions on that one.
Okay.
That's my version of claiming the Fifth Amendment. No, all right. We can move on to the next slide. A brief couple of federal updates. We were pleased to see that a group of members, including a number of members from California, introduced legislation to expand access to SNAP, which again is the same as CalFresh here in California for college students. Those of you that attended our federal fly-in visit earlier this year may recall that one of our top advocacy priorities has been repealing some of these long-standing barriers to college students, particularly full-time students receiving federal food aid under the SNAP program. And so we're supportive of and appreciative of Congressman Jimmy Gomez from the Los Angeles area in particular, as well as a number of his fellow members from California for introducing the EATS Act. It is an acronym. Congress enjoys their acronyms, but regrettably, I don't have in front of me what it's an acronym for, but that would expand access to SNAP for low-income college students. Next slide. This is one that's been pretty much at the top of the headlines for months now. No need to go to detail too much there, but ongoing negotiations between congressional leaders and the White House continue about the issue of the debt ceiling. As we've discussed previously, the House Republican majority has really pushed hard for a number of cuts in spending to federal programs as a condition of agreeing to raise the debt ceiling. Among those include reducing funding for the U.S. Department of Education by 22%, decreasing the maximum Pell Grant by $1,000 for 6.6 million recipients, eliminating Pell Grants for 80,000 students, and canceling several loan forgiveness and loan repayment programs. Obviously, we're pleased to see that those proposals are by and large dead on arrival in the Democratic-controlled Senate and in the White House, but we will continue to work with all members of the California congressional delegation, including our Republican members, to emphasizing the devastating effect that cuts to student aid and other higher education programs for low-income students would have, not just to the students themselves, but to the local and regional economy that those members represent. Next slide, please. Couple of updates on our recent engagement at the federal level. So last month, Interim Chancellor Gonzalez led a student roundtable as part of Community College Month, joined by Department of Education, U.S. Department of Education Senior Advisor John Garcia, and over 35 students who shared their experiences navigating college in a post-pandemic environment. In addition to sharing their concerns around college affordability and the need for flexibility to support working learners, students in particular highlighted the need for more federal work-study opportunities, which will continue to be a growing federal priority of ours, is expanding the federal work-study program and reforming it to be more equitable for our students. I want to thank Assistant Vice Chancellor Linda Vasquez for moderating this really critical conversation. Next slide. For my last slide, I just want to note that in a continued bit of really promising intersegmental partnership, I was pleased to join my counterparts at the UC and CSU federal offices for a congressional briefing a couple of weeks ago, where over 20 staff from members of the California congressional delegation of both parties came to hear about current issues in higher education post-pandemic, including our shared priorities that we are in total alignment with our UC and CSU federal partners on around expanding and doubling the Pell Grant, the pathway to citizenship for undocumented students, and expansion of access to basic needs programs like SNAP that we talked about. That concludes my update. I'm pleased to take any questions.
Thanks, colleagues. Any comments or questions?
So this is Pam Haynes again. I'm really glad that you mentioned about the federal work study and that you're really continuing that because California, as big as it is, I think only 10,000 of our students are eligible for it. Obviously, this would be a great benefit. So keep up the good work. We really need some changes in federal law.
Thanks, Board Member Haynes. Any other questions or comments by the board? I see Board Member Epstein. No? Okay. With that, I'd like to open it up to members of the public for any questions or comments.
The public comment period on item 6.6 is now open. We will begin with public comments in Sacramento and then move on to virtual comments. For virtual attendees, please use the raise hand feature, pressing *9 if you are calling in. You will have 2 minutes. I will hand it over to Vice President Aguinaldo to begin with public remarks in Sacramento.
Thank you very much. We have 4 public comments on this section. The first 2 are from Ginny May and Cheryl Aschenbach.
Good afternoon, President Costa, Vice President Aguinaldo, Chancellor Gonzalez, and members of the board. I'm Ginny May, President of the Academic Senate for California Community Colleges. So as you consider your position on AB 1749, I would like to share some efforts of the Academic Senate with transfer pathway alignment. In 2019-2020, we began the Transfer Alignment Project. The charge includes comparing the 20 UC transfer pathways with similar transfer model curriculum or TMCs, and then begin modification for alignment of those pathways where feasible. Several of the TMCs and UCTPs have been aligned already, but the work is slow without funding to bring needed faculty together. Then COVID hit and funding requests were set aside. However, during the spring 2022 BOG meeting, Board of Governors meeting, you approved the 23-24 system budget proposal, which included a request for one-time funding of $2.7 million for an intersegmental transfer success collaborative that would bring disciplined faculty from all 3 segments of the California higher education systems together to assess transfer pathway alignment with the goal of aligning pathways where feasible, then communicate pathway information to students and communities. Thank you. However, this item did not make the governor's January budget proposal nor the May revise, but we are working with the Chancellor's office right now to explore further funding opportunities. So.
Good afternoon, President Costa, Vice President Aguinaldo, Chancellor Gonzalez, and members of the board. Through the Transfer Alignment Project and the work we've done since 2019, that Jenny just mentioned, and then more recently with our work on ICUS and CalGETC, we've learned that yes, many of our ADT and UC transfer pathways can be aligned in the spirit of AB 1749. We've also learned that other pathways, if CSU and UC major preparation is aligned, will create unintended barriers for students wishing to complete pathways to just one system. Together with our academic senate leaders from CSU and UC, we've seen the emergence of some unintended consequences during development of CalGETC framework and standards and in our work with the Transfer Alignment Project. That is, pathways aligned as a single preparatory pathway must meet the requirements of both the CSU and UC systems. They are 2 systems of higher education with very different missions and very different career destinations in many cases. These often require very different lower division major preparation as well, even within a single discipline. AB 1749 is a great idea in principle. When it comes to potential implementation and impacts, we have concerns. It's critical that if AB 1749 moves forward, that there be room for transfer pathways that may not meet the requirements of transfer to both systems because of the different preparation needed. The current TMCs and ADTs have benefited students and provided valuable opportunities for transfer to the CSU. We need to make sure to keep improving these opportunities moving forward while being careful not to implement a one-size-fits-all transfer pathway that fails to adequately meet the diverse major preparation needs of our students as they transfer from 116 community colleges into 23 CSUs and 9 CSU campuses, and ultimately to innumerable career destinations. Lots of different preparations necessary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next 2 public comments are from Wendy Brill Weinkoop and Colin Fitzgerald.
My Apple Watch was just saying it was time to stand up, so thank you for that. I'm Wendy Brill-Weinkoop, President of the Faculty Association of California Community Colleges. AB 1749 is the bill to expand the ADTs to the UCs, and I ask you, members of the Board of Governors, to use your position and voice to advocate for two critical amendments to the bill. First, the CSUs and UCs need to honor credit for transfer of our courses from the CCCs, community colleges. It is deplorable that the CSU and UC system requires students to repeat courses that have been articulated as equivalent courses. This wastes time and resources for our students who have worked hard to complete these courses at our community colleges. Second, students earning an ADT and transferring to the CSUs and UCs should be prioritized at their chosen institution. Many of our students' life circumstances have them place bound, and a guarantee to an institution that requires them to either uproot their family, quit their job, or move from home is no guarantee. It is not enough to guarantee transfer admission to the CSU or UC system. The ADT pathway is not yet the guarantee we promised our students. I urge you to advocate for these amendments to AB 1749, and it's our responsibility to ensure that legislation indeed improves access to transfer to the students' UC of their choice and does not require them to repeat courses. Thank you.
President Costa, Vice President Aguinaldo, the Chancellor Gonzalez, members of the Board of Governors, and members of the public. Last time I sat before you, I lacked a beard and a bachelor's degree and a six-figure bank account. And now I only lack a six-figure bank account. Last time I sat before you in my last meeting as a member of this board, I called attention to the lack of equitable compensation for our student members, an issue which mattered to me because it barred too many of my fellow students at San Joaquin Delta College from opportunity to serve on this board. I returned to a board which has sponsored legislation to do just that, increase student compensation by thousands of dollars a semester. It brought tears to my eyes to know that the embers of change endure far longer than we students imagine they can. We students start movements and make demands, knowing power concedes nothing without them. And then we leave. We transfer or we complete our program and leave behind those demands to be carried by our fellow student leaders, unsure of their fate, unaware of our impact. This board is owed commendation for its commitment to ensure such demands never go unheard or unseen. That such movements are carried not only by student leaders, but helped along by this vessel of righteous power. Power that is turned on by the button which controls your microphones. Power which wields opportunity, power which wields vision, a vision for success in a California for all. Calbright Student Body Association, student trustee rights, student board of governor rights, and compensation.
30 seconds.
When I joined this board in 2019, none of these were threshed out ideas and none enjoyed the full support of this board. Thank you for changing that and for your continued commitment to empowering student leaders. With such opportunity, the students they serve will have a voice. The issues and barriers which continue to prevent them from completing programs timely will soon cease to exist. And the doors of the American dream, which too many of my generation see as fading, will be open wide, at least in the Golden State. For this, you are owed by me and all students in our system a gratitude of gratitude, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Nice to see a familiar face.
President Costa, that completes in-person comments, and there are no hands raised at this time.
Thank you so very much. With that, we move on to item 6.7, Board of Governors Recognition of Service.
Thank you, President Costa. I am committed to ending this meeting at 5 o'clock. This is happening. It is 4:30. Board members, thank you so much for this opportunity to bring you this item. It is rare that we get to bring back the incredible Californians who serve our students. Sometimes they join us months later, but I'm so grateful to see here on Zoom, Roy Shabazian, member Kevin Hall, and today we also will have potentially the last board meeting for our student board member, Joshua Elizondo.
this item summarizes their impact and gives you all an opportunity to thank the board members. Of course, Member Hall and Roy, I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you to reflect on the impact, maybe any feedback that you have for the board in terms of your hopes for the next generation of board members on this board. And then President Costa, I will then stand up and get the award for our student board member, Joshua Elizondo, who may potentially be having his last meeting today. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to first Roy, then Kevin, and then we'll end with Joshua.
Thank you. If you allow me, I'd like to thank several people and then also pass on a request. But I'd like to start with acknowledging my grandfather, who over a century ago was orphaned as a refugee and worked as a tailor. And like many California families, made sacrifices to support his children's education. That included supporting his children immigrating to the United States to attend a California community college and transfer. I also would like to thank many faculty and chancellor's office staff who put together countless professional development opportunities over the past 5 years that I happen to have attended and benefited immensely from, especially through the Academic Senate. I also want to thank some courageous faculty of color and women faculty at my local campus who courageously helped our campus promote their views in campus decision-making and also their leadership. And I also want to thank you, Board of Governors members and Chancellor's Office staff for being such good sports about hearing out my perspectives. Special thank you to former President Haynes and the Chancellor's Office for appointing me to serve on the ZTC Task Force, also known as the Burden-Free Instructional Materials Task Force, where we're working on a number of items, and especially OER, to eliminate textbook costs for students. And I think those recommendations will be coming to you probably at your next meeting. If I haven't burned through all of the goodwill, I would like to pass on a request. Although most of the Board of Governors work involves thinking at a very high level about what does California need for its community colleges, I'd ask that you also reach out to faculty and students, more and more of them, who might be unsure about their ability to approach you. But I'd ask that you build trust with them and ask them questions about their day-to-day experiences, both faculty and students, day-to-day experiences that might be hindering their ability to succeed. I want to thank you again for the past 2 years and for your ongoing work to promote education for Californians. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Shabazzi. And we'll save all of the congratulatory notes for the end. I'm going to go over to Board Member Hall, and then I'll open it up to my colleagues who I'm sure want to sing each of your praises.
Former Board Member Hall. Well, those 4 years went by very fast, I'll say that. But first and foremost, I just want to emphasize that I enjoyed meeting and working with each of you. I always appreciated that board members were very respectful to one another and that our meetings were always conducted in a very collegial environment. So in brief, it was just a pleasure to work with each and every one of you. It's also a lot of volunteer work to serve on the board, as you all well know. And so now that things are getting back to in-person meetings, I'd emphasize that it would be really important to, if it hasn't already been done, to reinstate the Monday night dinner, following the Monday meeting before the Calbright meeting on Tuesday. I always just thought that was so fun and a great way really to get to know other board members when you go out for drinks and dinner. So if you can afford it, I'd recommend you do that again. And that if board member Anderson ever has a board party at his house, I'd love to be invited to it. Also today in the mail, I received an award from the community colleges board. Here it is right here. It's just beautiful. And I'm not an actor. I'll never get an Oscar. So I do want to thank everyone for this great award right here. And I wish each of you the best of luck. There's a lot of work to do. I think tremendous progress has been made in the last 4 years. There's always going to be obstacles, but the bottom line is hopefully we're allowing more and more students to enter the system and become good critical thinkers and people who can help sustain our democracy. So thanks very much.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to open it up to some of our colleagues' questions or comments. I see board member Anderson has his hand raised.
Well, Kevin, Roy, anybody else, when the president allows me to do that party, everyone will be invited, both past, present, and hopefully future folks. And I just want to say to both you and Roy, thanks for your perspective. Thanks for all the value that you added in the debates and the discussions. And Roy, especially to you, your perspective for a layperson was always very insightful and very helpful. So thank you for all you've done.
Thank you. Colleagues, other comments?
We have member Medina and we have member Grande and then we have member Epstein.
I'm gonna echo on the words in which BOG member Shabasian said. BOG member Shabasian, you're the first member of the Board of Governors I ever met. In fact, where do I look? This way? Or, in fact, I met you on the day in which I met also BOG member Aguinaldo and then acting Chancellor Gonzalez. But basically what you said right now actually echoes the type of person you are, because never forget, I was at LA Valley College at then it was called a listening tour. You come up to me and right away you asked me what could be done different at community college system. I mean, without knowing you. So that actions just carried so much weight, and which I'll never forget you. And that's really how I'm going to define you and remember you to this date. Unbeknownst to me, at the moment within 1 year, I would be your colleague on the Board of Governors. So having said that, thank you. Thank you for all the work you do. Thank you for all the continued work you've done over at Santa Ana College, in which you happen to be a STEM instructor and you empower and you want to make sure you educate the next generation of STEM students, many of them coming from disenfranchised and historically marginalized communities. And I thank you for all you do. BOG member Hall, thank you for your professionalism. I never got to meet you in person. I got to meet you, obviously, I entered during the pandemic, but your professionalism, your dialogue, your conversations, obviously, and the board during closed session meetings, they were just always very professional, and you made sure that my voice was valued as well. But thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I want to start by thanking Roy for his term of service. I'm looking back through my inbox and noticed that in 2018, 5 years ago, he first reached out to ask me about my experience on the Board of Governors and what he could expect if he had been selected. Then in 2020, he mentions that he'd made it through the nomination process, or at least through the ASCCC portion of the nomination process, and would continue on to the appointments process with the governor's office. And now we're at the end of his term of service. And I cannot even begin to thank him enough for the valuable faculty insight and perspective he always brought to the Board of Governors. For Kevin, I can't thank him enough for just his willingness to begin to understand the California Community College system and the questions he asked and pondered with us about why we do what we do and how we got to where we are. And his insight will be missed tremendously. Thank you both for your service. It has been a pleasure to spend time with you.
Thanks, Jolene.
I'm going to be really fast because I just saw there's a stack of people waiting to do public comment. But I do want to wish both of our former board members the best. They both brought kind of unique perspectives, I think, to this board. And I just did want to assure, first of all, Kevin, if you had been this funny in board meetings, it would have been a lot better. You had to wait until you were out. But I also wanted to let you know that I have become kind of the social secretary for the board, and I've been planning Monday night dinners for ever since you left.
I'll just insert a quick comment, President Costa, and then we can move on. I just wanted to thank our board members as well. The more seniority and the longer your tenure has been on the community college board, the closer and closer you move to the center of the dais. And I think it says a lot that I'm now here. And as we move closer to the middle, we've seen so many different iterations of the board, and former board member Shabazian and former board member Hall have been part of one of many iterations where we still felt an incredible sense of team and an incredible sense of camaraderie. So even though you have different styles, we knew that at the center of your inquiry and your work was always the students. So I just wanted to say thank you. And I hope our paths cross again soon. And perhaps you could be just like former board member Baum, who just shows up randomly to our events anyway. So perfect. I'll pass it back to you.
So can I just?
Go
I'm
ahead,
sorry.
board member Haynes.
Just very quickly, I want to thank both of these two board members because they spent most of their existence in a box on Zoom. And yet they participated, they were engaged, and to the best of our ability, we got to know them, which is a benefit because sometimes that does not happen when we're in the little box. So I want to thank you both for your participation, your engagement, and that you cared enough to want to be appointed to the Board of Governors and on behalf of our students.
Thank you. I see board member Perry has her hand raised.
I'll echo, I think the sentiments of all my colleagues. Roy, I liked your quiet, thoughtful, different perspective. It was really helpful to our deliberations. And I always felt like I could feel you thinking through these issues and coming to a thoughtful conclusion. And Kevin, you're right about the dinners. You've made a good point. The conviviality of this board is really nice. Even when we disagree, there's a bond, and it's a really nice place to be in, and to be able to spend time with people from all over the state with so many different experiences. So thank you for making that point. And I will miss your glasses. You definitely always had the best glasses of anyone on the show.
All right.
So thank you for serving and the great questions that you would ask. Really basic, sort of common sense questions that guided us all in a good direction. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, board member Perry. I'll make it brief because I know you probably rather hear from the public than us, but thank you both. I mean, Kevin brought up, I think, these are basically volunteer gigs, and it is an immense amount of work as far as the agenda items. Obviously, great work put forward by our staff. Just to echo what folks have said, Roy, you are so incredibly thoughtful, and you really dig in and do the work on every single agenda item. And I think the very first time I talked to you, you had called just about the board as a whole and how to be an effective board member. And he is so incredibly conscientious in his work. And I know that I often look to you when we were thinking about things like multiple measures as a math professor to really understand in the real world how it works. So thank you for bringing that perspective. I know I really appreciated it. And Kevin, you came as kind of a neophyte to the community college world, and I actually appreciated it. The beauty of our board is that we all come from such varying backgrounds, and really the collective is served by each of these unique perspectives. And I really, I've been doing higher ed policy for longer than I would care to admit because it would tell you my age, but I appreciate it, as Jolena said, that sometimes you had us question our assumptions and why are things this way, which I think is really quite healthy. So thank you to each of you for your service to our students, our faculty, and our students in the greatest public education system in the world. It is appreciated. With that, Dr. Gonzalez, I know that you said you had something for board member Elizondo as well. I don't know if you want to do that before public comment or how you'd like to proceed.
Yeah, let me just reserve the right to say, Joshua, don't go too far. We did give him his award, so he will have to travel with that. This may not be his last meeting, so I will just highlight here that we may ask him to come back in July, which means he's either here as a formal member or we will have additional time to thank him. He is a student leader who was, I believe, the first foster youth to serve as a student board member. He is also someone who started his service to this system in the guided pathways work group before implementation. This is 2018 when we were just thinking about guided pathways. So there's a lot to say there, but I'll just say, President Costa, I think we'll reserve it for our next meeting because this may not be his final meeting.
Thank you. Appreciate that. With that, I'd like to see if there are any comments from members of the public on this item.
The public comment period on item 6.7 is now open. We will begin with public comments in Sacramento and then move on to virtual comments. For virtual attendees, please use the raised hand feature, pressing *9 if you are calling in. You'll have 2 minutes. I will hand it over to Vice President Aguinaldo to begin with public remarks in Sacramento.
Thank you very much. We have 7 public comments on this item. The first 2 are from Clemata Roland and Jessica Dominguez.
President Costa, Vice President Aguinaldo, Chancellor Dr. Daisy Gonzalez, and members of the board. Thank you for having us and good afternoon. And thank you for service for both of the student members, for the work you do to our students every day. Chancellor Dr. Gonzalez, once you came in, you welcomed us. And not only that, you opened up spaces and opportunities for student leaders for us to thrive. Earlier today, you said that data does not drive change. Your student-centered leadership and unwavering commitment to student success has been an instrumental catalyst for change in our community college system, to the members of our student senate, and for the 1.8 million students in our system. And for that, we're here today to say thank you, thank you, thank you.
Hello, members of the Board of Governors, President Acosta and Chancellor Gonzalez. My name is Jessica Dominguez. I am a student at College of the Desert, and I will be transferring this fall to UC San Diego to study political science and international relations. I'm also a part of the Student Senate for California Community Colleges, where I currently serve as one of the vice presidents. I would like to use this time to express my deepest gratitude to our departing interim chancellor, Dr. Daisy Gonzalez. I met Chancellor Dr. Gonzalez in August of last year. The Student Senate held our monthly board meeting here in lovely Sacramento, and there were whispers that our interim chancellor would be joining us. Dr. Gonzalez did indeed join us, and she shared her inspiring story and also spoke about the impact that her own mentors have had in her life. So after her agenda item, I walked up to Dr. Gonzalez and asked her 2 things. Number 1, what does a chancellor do? And number 2, will you be my mentor? And to my surprise, she agreed. As a first-gen college student, as a daughter of immigrants, and as a young Latina woman, it is rare to find a role model that not only looks like me and comes from a similar background as me, but that is exactly what they say they are about. When you talk about commitment to the vision for success, Dr. Gonzalez is that. When you mention a student-centered system, Dr. Gonzalez has lived that, not through words, but through action. The day before I first shadowed her, I read an article online that stated, students have and always will be Dr. Daisy Gonzalez's North Star. 30 seconds.
What I can say, standing before you all, sitting before you all, that couldn't be more true. So thank you, Dr. Gonzalez, for your commitment to closing equity gaps, for your audacious leadership in the face of countless adversities,
and for being in many ways a star to us students, as you stand as a testament to the potential we all have regardless of where we come from. Thank you.
Gosh, I hope you said yes to being her mentor. That would be really awkward. The next two public comments are from Chanel Nguyen and Marco Martinez.
Hello, President Costa, board members, and interim Chancellor Gonzalez. Just like everyone else, I'm here to thank you for your service to California Community Colleges. My name is Chanel Nguyen with the Student Senate of California Community Colleges. I am a student in Diablo Valley College, and I will also be transferring to UC San Diego, just like Jessica. And I know it's been said multiple times today, but yet not enough to measure our gratitude towards your commitment for our success. I may not share the same amount of experience working with you as my colleagues here, but I don't lack the inspiration that you give for me as a leader. You have inspired me and many other students that we can do better, we deserve better, and we can be better. When you came to our board meeting, I had the privilege to sit right beside you. I was so nervous. I did not know who you were. I did not know what a chancellor was, but all I knew was you were really important. But when you spoke, you really inspired me. And I really look up to you, and I hope, and you inspire me to become someone that I can be. You a success story that I can achieve. And that means a lot to me. I was inspired by your presence and your story that made me believe that I can be someone like you sitting right there.
30 seconds.
As the incoming Vice President of Legislative Affairs, I will begin my term after Chancellor Christian begins her own term. But I want to also build on the strong framework that you have set up for not just what to advocate for, but why we need to advocate and how. Thank you again for your service before, during, and what I'm sure will be after your term as interim chancellor. And you are truly a figure that students can rely on, not only as an advocate, but an idea to strive towards. Thank you.
President Costa, Vice President Aguinaldo, and Chancellor Dr. Daisy Gonzalez, esteemed members of the Board of Governors. My name is Marco Martinez. I'm a student at Bakersfield and Taft College. And words can't even begin to describe the impact you've had on me. Like Jessica said, you know, being a Latino man of color and having similar backgrounds. And I remember one of the first things Dr. Bull asked of us is, what is our why? My why growing up was, you know, wanting to be a role model, because growing up, I didn't see people who look like me in these positions, you know, and I know like in your position, it hasn't been easy getting to that. And something interesting is that me and Dr. Gonzalez actually started our interim journeys at the same time. I did not start the term in the Student Senate as the vice president. I actually started as director, and then I moved my way up as an interim vice president a few days after the term started. So it was a very rapid catapult. And with that, I just feel like me and Dr. Gonzalez saw each other grow in our roles, become comfortable in our roles, and just empower as many students as we can. And thank you so much for being that role model to all of us. I just know there's so many Daisies out there, so many Marcos out there, and so many other people out there who wish to make it this far and will make it this far. And just how you have been empowering me all year, I just want to tell you, keep reaching for the stars and keep breaking those glass ceilings. Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez.
Thank you very much. The next two public comments are from Zachariah Wooden and Ginny May.
Hello, President Costa, Vice President Aguinaldo, Interim Chancellor Dr. Gonzalez, and members of the Board of Governors. My name is Zachariah Wooden. I'm a student at San Joaquin Delta College, and I also serve with the Student Senate for California Community Colleges as the Vice President of Legislative Affairs. I'm speaking at public comment today because I want to offer a heartfelt and genuine thank you for your just as heartfelt and genuine service to California's community colleges. Not just as a system, but also as the people in that system, including, of course, us students. In my role serving with the Student Senate, which I've thankfully had 2.5 years of doing, you've inspired me as a leader in more ways than I can count, but not more ways than I can think of examples of. One of the which is your belief in saying that transformation is better than saying reform. It sticks with me because transforming something altogether to be better, to better serve the system and its students reflects true change, not just reforms. It taught me that as we live, work, and study in a state, a country, and a world that is going through many changes, it should have us reimagine systems that serve our students in ways that can be more student-centered and student-serving, a mission that you've championed in your term as interim chancellor. I'm also reminded of the time that I had the pleasure of joining you in February to visit various Congress members to advocate for the California Community College system. Your note in the breakfast preceding our visits for us to not shy away from the uncomfortable asks because we were there to advocate on how best to serve, again, the system and students
30
in
seconds.
spite of and because of the difficult environment. It's the hardest conversations that must even be had with those who disagree. It's our duty as leaders, and I was inspired by your leadership and call to action. I know that my feelings are not alone. Of course, I've been joined by my colleagues who share praise for you and your system and your service as interim chancellor and beyond. You are a hero figure for our students, not just student leaders, because on this, I'm sure that you can agree, all students are student leaders. And I earnestly believe that you are a model for those students to continue to work for the best California community college system it can possibly be. Thank you.
Greetings again, members of the board. I'm Jenny May. First of all, can you hear me? First of all, the ACCC extends our heartfelt gratitude and appreciation to Roy Shabazian for his service and work on the California Community Colleges Board of Governors from 21 to 23. We sincerely appreciate all he has done for the California Community College system, and we wish him the best of luck in his future endeavors. And we also thank Kevin Hall and Joshua Elizondo for their dedication to the California community colleges and the students served. We truly appreciate what each of these members have brought to this system. And finally, we share our deep appreciation to Daisy Gonzalez for her service as chancellor, for her leadership and friendship to the faculty, the students, and the staff in this system. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next two public comment come from Colin Fitzgerald and Catherine Squire.
My comment is directed primarily toward former member Kevin Hall, whom I had the pleasure of serving alongside during my tenure on the Board of Governors. Mr. Hall is owed a tremendous heap of gratitude for his tenure on this board. Kevin was best known for his poignant, quick-witted questions, such as, Cullum, what item are we on? No, seriously, every board needs a Kevin Hall. His insight, his inquisitiveness, and his ability to cut through the tension which naturally arises in these meetings and to find the basic truth helped me so much as a student leader who knew little to nothing when I first arrived and who was too scared to ask the right questions, even if they seemed like obvious questions to ask. So, Mr. Hall, thank you for your distinguished service, and may the road rise to meet you in your next endeavors. And then I would also like to compound my fellow students' comments for the outgoing Chancellor, Ms. Gonzalez, Dr. Gonzalez. There's nothing I could quite say to encapsulate the immense debt that this system is owed to you. Other than, the littlest things you did to the biggest things you did mattered tremendously. I was reading a post in the governor's website announcing the appointment of Mr. Medina.
30 seconds.
And Dr. Gonzalez led her statement on the announcement of that appointment with the sentence, when you have students at every level of decision-making, the community college is better for it. And something so small, announcing or saying that during a note on an appointment, may not matter to this board, but it matters tremendously in terms of mindset, in terms of, having a determination to empower student leaders. And every single thing you did that. You have set an incredibly high bar for the incoming chancellor, one that may never be met. So thank you for your distinguished service, and we're all the better for it.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Catherine Squire, and I was the former VP of the SSCCC back in 2020. I was a student leader when COVID-19 had just started, and it was a very overwhelming and difficult time to be a student leader. Inequities were being heightened, and students were dealing with basic needs more than ever before. I had just started my term and had yet to find my voice when I was appointed to serve on the DEI task force. But this is where I had the honor of getting to know Chancellor Gonzalez as our guiding light through such a dark and strenuous time. I remember attending my very first meeting virtually and being absolutely intimidated as the only student in the room. But then Chancellor Gonzalez entered the meeting room, bringing with her an energy much too radiant and bright for the early morning meeting we were having before I'd had my first cup of coffee. But anyone who knows her knows that that's exactly what she is. She brings the energy every single time. She shows up for our students. She has shown up for our students in our system every single day in full force. She puts us at the forefront of every decision while giving us the tools to make the change we wanted to see. Together, we crafted recommendations in a way that was honest and vulnerable. And this was just some of the work I saw, while I know she juggled many other hats as well. Through it all, she has proven again and again to be an ally to our students, operating on the principles of compassion and empathy we so much need to see and being the backbone of our system. Today, I find myself as a graduate of UC Berkeley and as a Capitol Senate fellow in the state legislature. This is in no short thanks to Chancellor Gonzalez's mentorship through my time as a student leader and beyond. I want to thank her for her leadership, her work, which has changed our system for the better and changed lives for millions of students, including mine. Lastly, I wish her the best in their future endeavors, as I know she will succeed in whatever role she takes next. Thank you.
And the last public comment is from Alexis Zaragoza.
What's up, y'all? All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Alexis Atsilaski Zaragoza. I don't know what to do. This is the craziest time for me coming back in here and seeing all of you. I would like to relay how important Daisy has been, and I'll have way more comments later. Don't trust me. Daisy Gonzalez has been such an amazing influence on the system, obviously on students within the system, and making sure that they feel empowered and like they have a right to be in this space and in spaces all across California. But she's also been a massive influence on me during my time here at the Board of Governors, but also moving into the UC system and moving out of the UC system and going into the workforce where 2 years out of being in this space, she will still answer my crazed phone call, trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do with my life. Daisy Gonzalez has been here through it all. And it's not just you, it's also your story. I mean, I know knowing you for so long, one of the first things I could think of in the region space was we have nothing for foster youth, which ended up leading to me and my partner Jamal in the space, crafting the Foster Youth Award, which is now about $50,000, giving to students who are above the age limit that's given to foster youth in California. And, you know, I just think about all the different things that you've influenced on me. And despite everything that I have done or whatever, people are always like, what do you mean you're insecure? I'm wildly insecure, but Daisy Gonzalez makes me not insecure. You know, before I'd even thought about trying to be on the Board of Regents, she was one of the first ones to say, have you thought about this yet? Are you doing it? And it was the first time that I actually thought that I could do it. And I did it, which is thanks to Daisy. So yeah, I have plenty more to say later, but the thing that I kept thinking on my very long train ride over here today was I was thinking about Sleeping Beauty, which was one of my favorite movies when I was a kid, and how all the fairies give her a gift.
30 seconds.
And I think Daisy's gift to me is being fearless, just like she's fearless. And I love you for that. So I'm so happy that you were chosen to be in this space. I'm happy for your future and all the things you're going to do. And I'm happy for our future because you're never going to leave me. Yes, thank you so much for everything that you've done. You have made the biggest impact and I hope you feel that. So thank you.
President Costa, we do have one member who, or excuse me, member of the public who has called in.
Okay, great.
Yulia Tarasova, you have control of your mic and can address the board.
Dear Board of Governors, apologies that I'm not in person as I was worried that I wouldn't beat the traffic to Sacramento at this fine hour. Thank you, Kevin Hall and Roy Shabazian, for serving on the Board of Governors and being amazing Zoom colleagues while we were waiting for the closed sessions to start. Before my first Board of Governors meeting, I was introduced to Chancellor Gonzalez in her role as Deputy Chancellor. I had little understanding of the role. However, that initial meeting changed everything for me. In just 1 hour, I learned 3 key takeaways that have remained close to my heart. To be unapologetically yourself, dream boldly, and embrace the power and perseverance and resilience. One of the fondest memories will forever be 2021 Chancellor's Fall listening tour. We went on great lengths, catching red-eyed flights to San Diego and driving 4 hours up north to hear firsthand from students about their post-pandemic experiences in colleges. It was during this tour that I added the 4th key takeaway to my notes. There, Chancellor Gonzalez exemplified the value of empathy, creating a nurturing environment where everyone felt heard, supported, and empowered. As Chancellor Gonzalez once said to me when I presented an idea that seemed ambiguous, impossible, yet unconventional, let's think about how we can make it happen. Her words have resonated deeply with me ever since. And today, during the state and federal updates, we saw the dreams of students become bills. Thank you, Daisy, for being an inspiration, not only to me, but to millions of students across the state. Your leadership has been modeled what it means to serve and lead with unwavering dedication. You have been a beacon of light, guiding the California community colleges towards success and inspiring countless students to become the best versions of themselves and dream boldly.
Thank you. It's so incredibly nice to hear from some of our former student board members, Colin, Yulia, and Alexis. It's great to see you all. I see, Kevin, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, just one final thought. I know it's 5:10, and you wanted to break the meeting at 5. I just wanted to publicly thank also Christina Castro. I mean, I've thanked the board members, but Christina is in many ways the face of the board. It's the first contact you have sometimes with board members, and she's just there all the time to get things done with a great smile on her face. So thanks, Christina, for your great work. That's
Thank
it.
you. Thanks, Kevin. And I do know that we're close to time, but I do want to invite up actually Dr. Navarrete or Vice Chancellor O'Brien. They have a couple of items to present to Dr. Gonzalez.
President Costa, if I can just say, this is too much. And I am getting old.
Am I allowed to say too bad? Just want to take a few moments to express our appreciation for this time, this serving in public spaces and public sector at any level is difficult, especially one of the largest system of higher ed and during such a tumultuous time. So we do have, we won't read all of these to you in the interest of time, but we wanted to highlight some notes of appreciation from some state and federal leaders that we have.
Yes, thank you. So from the chair of the Senate Education Committee, Senator Josh Newman, an official resolution of the California State Senate commending Daisy Gonzalez, PhD. And I won't read the whereas, I'll read the resolved. Resolved by Senator Josh Newman that Dr. Daisy Gonzalez be extended deep appreciation for her dedication and contributions as interim chancellor of the California Community Colleges and conveyed best wishes for continued success in the future. Yeah, okay. A certificate of recognition from Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis, of course, a member of our board and the second highest ranking constitutional elected official in the state of California. And then last but not least, from US Senator Alex Padilla, United States Senator Alex Padilla read an official statement of commendation into the official congressional record, which is now in the record permanently, and a printed copy was sent here for you, Chancellor Gonzalez.
Let's get back to work.
We get to embarrass you a little bit, Dr. Gonzalez. I see that the time is 4:13. Board Member Medina, is it urgent?
No, it's not. But as board members, I think we had the opportunity to thank the interim Chancellor Gonzalez. I mean, we thanked board members Hall and Shabazian. Can we have the opportunity to thank her? I mean, even though she's going back to Deputy Chancellor, but still.
Yes.
Okay, so I just really quick in the interest of time, just say about something that gets students really excited. I'm not referring about getting a good grade or a scholarship, but it's each time they see interim Chancellor Daisy Gonzalez. I'll never forget October 21st, 2021. At the time, I was on the board of directors with the SSCCC. And I was asked, actually, I represented the region which oversees LA Valley College. I was asked to represent and go participate, and then it was called the listening tour. Over at LA Valley College, which happens to be Chancellor Gonzalez alma mater. I remember driving up the 101 freeway with the level of excitement. It's that same level of excitement that I have today when I see Chancellor Gonzalez. Fast forward to a few months later, I'm on the board of governors, have the opportunity to work closer with Chancellor Gonzalez, going all throughout the state, you know, from San Diego to Santa Ana College, to Allen Hancock College, to the halls of the California State Capitol, the US Capitol. I've had the opportunity to see both interim Chancellor Daisy Gonzalez and Daisy Gonzalez. And one thing that I'll never forget about this individual is the level of humility, of humble you are as a person. I think the event I'll always remember you by is being over at San Diego Mesa College, as well as San Diego City College, where you went to an event in which out of your own pocket, actually, you gave gift cards, you took food to students that were in the foster care system with the next up program. And that connection with them was just so strong at that event. And afterwards at San Diego City was for the students in which didn't have a family, obviously, who was going to sing them, who's going to tell them Merry Christmas or sing them happy birthday. And little things like that, I'll never forget you by. I mean, granted, you're still here. But thank you really on behalf of the 1.8 million students in the California Community College system for being that very, very humble person. And wish you the best of luck and see you still in the system.
Thank you, Board Member Medina, for your comments. Colleagues, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say for those of you that would like to add on, we will use this as our board member reports, which is the next item. So please raise your hand if you'd like to speak. Okay, I see a couple. I'm going to go with Board Member Villalobos, Board Member Haynes, followed by Vice President Aguinaldo.
Mine actually is a report. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Dealer's choice, boss. Dealer's choice.
Yeah. But yes, very honored to have served with you as well. But I don't want to add to the pile of amazing things that everyone has said. Everything has been said. But again, we've talked before, so very proud of having served with you. I have a couple of things I want to talk about. First, I want to congratulate Santiago Canyon College on their 10 years of service to veterans through the Veterans Resource Center, as well as being designated as a military-friendly gold school. I was fortunate enough to attend their event. It was an incredible event. And that award or that designation does not come easy. It is very difficult to obtain. And once you do, it really does let people know that it is a college that will take care of its veterans and military families. The second, not to dampen the mood, but it will allow me to finish on a positive note. Memorial Day is coming up. For many of us, that has a much different meaning. Reminds us that freedom really isn't free. So I encourage you to take the time to find someone online, just Google, someone who lost his life or who lost her life, and read their bio, and just take a minute just to reflect on what Memorial Day really means as we get ready for the summer. And last but not least, staying on the veteran topic, I was invited to a graduation from Cal Poly Pomona, which obviously I couldn't attend because I'm here. But the reason I mentioned that is because the gentleman who invited me is an Air Force veteran. I met his wife at my optometrist's office, and I realized, or she mentioned, that he had been deployed and was coming back soon. I offered to help if he had any questions once he was ready to leave the service, and luckily enough, he actually reached out. So being an LBCC alum, I invited him to apply and to meet with someone at Long Beach City College. He transferred from Long Beach City College and is graduating today with his degree in civil engineering. So Eric Villarreal, just congratulations and thank you for giving me the time. And again, an honor to serve with you. So.
Thank you, Board Member Haynes.
So thank you. I too have a report. It'll be very quick. As you know, I serve as a member of the Black African-American Advisory Panel. And they have some questions around the re-enrollment of students who are coming back to us. And the barriers for some of them who might have a library book that they've lost or other kind of penalties that would keep them from enrolling. Also, part of this is we have as a policy, as an example, a policy of you can only have 3 tries at a course, and then you're not allowed to. And what that might do in terms of impact, especially around the 2 transfer courses that are gateway, math in particular, and then English as well. And so there may be others. So they've asked me to put this on, at least on the minds of the chancellor's office, and to help identify what those barriers may be that we have not thought about. And so I said that, so thank you. Now, Daisy, you're the best. You have epitomized what leadership means. It means action. And your commitment and your story, you've lived your story, and you've made us all believe that we can do what we can do because of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Aguinaldo.
Thank you very much, President Costa. I wanted to wish everyone happy NHPI month. Our system has been doing so much to recognize the importance of this month. And one of the ways we recognized it was on April 12th when we held the Representation Matters webinar. There were a ton of powerhouse players, not only speaking, but in attendance of that webinar. And one of them was our very own interim chancellor, Daisy Gonzalez, who not only gave a compelling introductory statement, but talked about things like the amount of Post-it notes around her computer monitor that had all these quotes, these inspirational quotes, and it made me very jealous of what the things that are on your Post-it notes. Mine are like grocery notes. Hers are like, quotes of how to lead a system. So I just wanted to combine the two and say happy Asian American Pacific Islander Month, and also thank you to Interim Chancellor Gonzalez. You mean the world to me. Obviously, there's a lot going on in the system. We had a lobby day. Just wanted to thank our government relations team for hosting such a wonderful day. And we had the APAHI conference. I just wanted to thank my colleagues there because it was truly a transformative workshop and conference. And I just wanted to also plug the little mom and pop bookshop that set itself up in the lobby, made sure I bought every Filipino book they had, walked away with 22 books that I had no idea how I was going to bring home because I was already exceeding my baggage count. But there's a lot going on, and we're very busy, and I'm glad that you were at the helm for the time that you were, because you made such an impact, and that's incredibly obvious. So thank you for everything.
Thank you so much. Any other board comments for the board reports?
I have one. This is Member Elizondo. So I gave the keynote at the LGBTQ plus summit, and that was an experience, my first keynote. And that ties to my second part of the comment. And as I also want to acknowledge Chancellor Gonzalez for her service in the system, and in particular, her guidance and mentorship to me. It has greatly impacted my ability to not only accept myself for who I am as a foster youth and leadership and not doubting myself, from not having that parental or guidance in my life, but and then also just you taking the time and investing into me, knowing that like I am alone a lot of the times. And so like I really appreciate you making me feel like I belong. So thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Elizondo. Any other board member reports or comments?
This is a member LeGrand, maybe a brief report. I had a Zoom meeting with a guy named Charles Ewell with the Housing and Education Resource Group, and former Chancellor Elihu Harris, who I think was at Peralta College, to discuss kind of community college housing projects and how that actually works. And I found out today that actually Lizette had actually chaired that task force. So I'm going to get with her after this because they want to have a follow-up meeting with me on the 30th. It might be important to have her participate there. So I wanted to just say that. And the other thing is just, I want to also thank Vice Chancellor O'Brien for the opportunity to participate in the legislative day. It was I think I'd been on board a week. And so you got to walk the halls of Sacramento doing some kind of threat that we had to like evacuate and do all kind of stuff. So it was a great trial by fire, and I came back to the meeting, so I'm really happy about that. So and I just finally, I really just had a conversation with Daisy after I got appointed, and that she called and we wanted to set the meeting. We were supposed to have like a 45-minute conversation. I think it was like an hour and a half or something like that. So you probably do get correct. She goes, no, I keep pushing off meetings, so let's keep talking. So, but that's just the kind of individual that I see that she is. And I've really, in the short time that I've known you, have been really, really impressed and really happy that you have passed my life at this point. So thank you for all you've done. As I can see, I am so impressed with what the community college system has been doing. This is my last segment of higher education that I've been involved in since I've done UC, CSU, and independent colleges. So learning about the community college and just the efforts that you've made with the information sharing that you even give us every week on your notes has just been invaluable as a new member coming on and learning what the work's about. So I applaud you and I thank you and wish you the best.
Board Member LeGrand, you saved the best system for last, so welcome. We're glad to have you here. Any other board member comments or questions on their board report?
So this is Member Elizondo again. I forgot one thing. So I also work with the LA County Board of Supervisors, and currently they're doing an education coordination council, and they're trying to find ways to increase dual enrollment in LA County through LAUSD. So I would really like to facilitate that conversation and bring the chancellor's office into their sphere of influence, because I think that's the second largest education K through 12 system in our country, that if we can get those students on track to graduation, I think that would greatly increase our equity gaps.
Thank you. Any other board reports? Okay, I'm not seeing any.
President Costa.
Yep.
So just last month, actually no, this month I gave the report to the SSCCC, who I want to thank because a few of their board of directors members are actually here today. They spoke. In fact, 4 of them were my colleagues last year when I was on the board of directors, and some of them are transferring, graduating. So thank you for all the continued great work y'all do serving as a voice. And also to my predecessors on the board, as student members on the board of governors, Alexis Zaragoza and Colin Fitzgerald, thank you for being here and for all the great work y'all do. And Yulia Tarasova, who's actually here virtually.
Great, thank you. All right, next we have our public forum. I do understand we have a number of comments. So I'm going to turn it over to Vice President Aguinaldo to manage those that are there in person.
Thank you very much, President Costa. We have 7 public comments. The first 2 are from Ginny May and Cheryl Aschenbach. I hope you're going to talk about how successful your spring plenary was.
So this is a little bit longer public comment. So good evening, President Costa, Vice President Aguinaldo, Chancellor Gonzalez, and members of the board. I am Ginny May, President of the Academic Senate for California Community Colleges, and this is the last time that I will say that. I'd like to thank you for your support of faculty, academic senates, and the ASCCC as we work together to ensure students in the California Community Colleges system have high quality educational opportunities with full access to the courses and support they need and want to be successful. Their success is our success. Transfer, degree, certificate, or just a few courses to improve their lives, such as employment opportunities, or even to help their children or siblings with their schoolwork. It was an honor to serve on the Chancellor Search Committee this year and participate in the learning tour to some of our community colleges. I really enjoyed having time to get to know some of you as people. Here are a few highlights of the collaboration among ASCCC, the Chancellor's Office, and practitioner organizations. AB 1111, Common Course Numbering, I've heard a little bit about it today. AB 928, Transfer Achievement Reform. AB 927, Baccalaureate Degrees. AB 89, Modern Policing Program. AB 1187, Supervised Tutoring. Ethnic Studies, Equal Employment Opportunity, Open Educational Resources Initiative, and Rising Scholars. There's a lot more, but that's been on the plate this year. Many dedicated faculty statewide have joined in this work with other system-wide constituency representatives. They have provided support and voice so that student-centered solutions continue to move forward. The ASCCC looks forward to collaborating on planning and implementation and other statewide efforts, as well as such career and technical education pathways, AB 1705, equitable placement and enrollment, and re-examining the 50% law, to name a few. Some of the upcoming work of the ASCCC includes cultural humility. This year's executive committee made an intentional investment into cultural humility journey to improve the work we do together and moreover, the service we provide to local academic senates. Our cultural humility work will benefit us as a board. We'll be further developing the cultural humility toolkit we created as a resource for local academic senates. This initial journey of learning will continue into the next academic year. Elevating faculty voice. In response to a referred resolution last fall, the ASCCC is forming a task force to examine ways to elevate faculty voices, including those from traditionally underrepresented groups in the ASCCC. The task force is charged to examine ways to elevate faculty voices, including those from traditionally underrepresented groups. And I think I just said that. With an eye toward improvement and amplifying faculty voice, the structures, processes, and procedures for determining delegates for voting in ASCCC elections and resolutions. And then finally, we have CID, TMCs, ADTs, and GE, acronym all the way. We will be examining and clarifying our processes in these areas as we gear up for Common Course numbering, and the new CalGETC pathway. With that, I'd like to congratulate Cheryl Aschenbach, ASCCC President-elect, who will take office on June 3rd. Many of you know her already. She is thoughtful, collaborative, innovative, supportive, hardworking, and most of all, a true friend. In closing, thank you. It has been an honor to serve on the ASCCC Executive Committee for 8 years, to serve with all of you, and to serve faculty in our system as we all serve the students in our communities in the California Community Colleges system. Thank you.
Good afternoon again. I'm not quite willing to admit that it's the evening already, but hello, President Costa, Vice President Aguinaldo, Chancellor Gonzalez, and the board. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the incredible service and leadership of my friend and colleague, Ginny May, to our system, our students, and our faculty, most recently as president of the Academic Senate for California Community Colleges. But over many years of faculty leadership as a local and district Academic Senate president, as an ACCJC commissioner, and as a member of the executive committee since 2015. Service at the level Ginny has performed to the benefit of so many requires a can-do and will-do attitude, an incredible amount of knowledge and willingness to always learn more, nearly 24/7 responsiveness, and a great deal of travel and time away from home, all of which is very demanding on those of us serving as well as on our families. Ginny is modeling the prioritization of family by choosing not to seek re-election as the Academic Senate president so that she could be more present for her husband, Alex, son, Sam, and daughter-in-law, Ari. Ginny is not going far, thank goodness. She'll continue to serve all of us as she continues to lead transfer-related efforts for the Academic Senate, including continuing to co-chair the AB 1111 Common Course Numbering Task Force, chairing the Intersegmental Curriculum Work Group, and continuing to represent community college faculty on the AB 928 Implementation Committee. So on behalf of the Academic Senate for California Community Colleges, the 56,000 faculty we represent, and the 1.8 million students we serve, Ginny, thank you.
Okay, we highly encourage the next several speakers to stick to a 1-minute time limit, please. The next two speakers are Dr. Syrian Villavicencio and Ulysses Velasco.
President Costa, Vice President Aguinaldo, Chancellor Gonzalez, distinguished members of the Board of Governors. My name is Dr. Syrian Villavicencio. I'm the co-chair of the Department of Political Science at San Joaquin Delta College in Stockton. I'm grateful to see a number of my former students here presenting to you today. But I'm also a gubernatorial appointee. I serve as the chair of the Higher Education Equity Committee for the California Commission on Asian and Pacific Islander American Affairs. First, I want to wish all of you a happy Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. It is important to recognize the contributions of our diverse communities, numbering approximately 7.2 million living in our great state of California. On behalf of the commission, we also want to congratulate the historic appointment of Dr. Sonia Christian, the first woman and the first of South Asian descent to lead our 116 college system. We look forward to working with her and the esteemed members of the board. I would also like to highlight an important historic legislative victory that our commission and community led last year, where California became the first state in the nation to invest in supporting our low-income, first-generation Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander students. The Anapi Student Achievement Program, inspired by the Puente and Umoja programs, not only was enshrined into Ed Code,
30 seconds,
but appropriated $16 million of ongoing funding, $8 million to support our disproportionately impacted Anapi students at both CCCs and at CSUs. We are grateful for our partners in both the Chancellor's Office and the Foundation of California Community Colleges, who are now implementing this historic program, where 43 California Community College campuses have recently been identified to receive the inaugural seed funding. Finally, we also desire to partner with the board to advance disaggregated data for the Anapi community. We know that this will help identify our most vulnerable Anapi students and provide them with the help and resources they need to succeed. Again, we are proud of this work and look forward to strengthen our partnership with you and to help our students dream big and to also thrive. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ulises Velasco. I'm the Vice President of Student Services at Mendocino College. And I'm also a founding member of Colegas, and I serve on the board. I want to thank Chancellor Dr. Daisy Gonzalez and Deputy Chancellor Lizette Navarrete for their service to the California Community College system and their support of Colegas. Colegas is an organization comprised of Latinx professionals and is dedicated to supporting faculty, staff, and managers as they work to continue advancing Latinx student success. The Chancellor's Office support of Colegas
30 seconds.
Under Dr. Gonzalez has allowed us to provide many professional development opportunities for employees of the system. I'll skip to the end. Thank you both for your time, your dedication, your support, and everything that you've done for the Latinx community, the community college system, and for professionals as we look to advance our work and remove barriers for our students. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And our last speakers are Cynthia Orozco, Dr. Michelle Batista, and Aaron Vines.
My name is Dr. Michelle Batista, Vice President of Student Services at Lake Tahoe Community College. It is my honor to be here speaking on behalf of the coalition, which was created when 3 higher educational organizations, Amend, APAHI, and Colegas, decided to stand in solidarity in addressing conditions of inequity within the California Community College system. I am here to express our deepest gratitude for the exceptional service of Dr. Daisy Gonzalez as interim chancellor. I cannot emphasize what it has meant to each of us individually and organizationally to have a woman of color, Latina, doctora,
30 seconds.
advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and model authentic leadership. Your strategic vision and innovative approach have helped shape policies and initiatives that promote access, equity, and excellence in education. On behalf of the coalition and the students and communities we serve, we extend our heartfelt thanks for your exemplary service. Your commitment to excellence and equity has made a lasting difference in the lives of countless individuals, and we are privileged to have had the opportunity to work alongside you. Your contributions will be remembered and cherished for years to come, and we wish you continued success. With deep appreciation, thank you, Doctora Gonzalez.
Interim Chancellor Gonzalez, my name is Cynthia Orozco, librarian at East Los Angeles College. I'm speaking on behalf of the inaugural class of the Aspiring Radical Leaders Institute, ARLI, of which I've been privileged and honored to participate in. I'll be honest, although I applied to ARLI knowing it was an attempt to be truly transformative and meaningful in DEI, past participation in other DEI initiatives made me cautiously optimistic. I mean, a DEI initiative supported by the Chancellor's Office. It just blew my mind, but
30 seconds.
You have been a champion of ARLI and supporting leaders of color. You've modeled what it means to work in existing systems of higher education and make systemic changes needed to promote issues of equity and race, to deconstruct and dismantle structural racism, which in turn enables us to address the needs of students, faculty, staff, and administrators of color. Dr. Gonzalez, you have led the charge in improving the quality of education in the California Community College system. Your collaborative spirit has been instrumental in creating structures that support and empower our diverse student population. Thank you for your relentless commitment to supporting leaders of color in the system. Your vision for creating a more equitable space will forever leave a mark.
Board President Costa, Vice President Aguinaldo, Board of Governors, and Chancellor Daisy Gonzalez. Thank you so much for your work, all of you. My name is Dr. Aaron Vines. I'm the interim executive director of Amend. And I just wanted to take I can't take a few minutes, but a few seconds. Well, when we talk about the work of coalition and what our purpose was, some might not be willing to jump aboard and be willing to support it because it can be a bit controversial, especially we had a lot of ideas in the beginning of being very radical leaders and
30 seconds.
And being courageous. And you showed courageous leadership by supporting us making sure that we had support along the way, and it means everything. You're in an interim position, but you felt necessary to support an organization, grassroots, that wanted to change the landscape of California community colleges by erasing white supremacy. And you didn't run from that. You ran to it to help. And we thank you and appreciate you for that.
We have several virtual hands raised. Scott Carras, you have control of your mic and can address the board.
Hello, distinguished members of the board. My name is Scott Allen Karras II, and I am a student at San Joaquin Delta College representing the EPIC Learning Committee here at Delta College. Delta College is an ANAPISI designated institution and is one of 43 community colleges identified by the board to receive the inaugural state funding for the ANAPI Student Achievement Program. I wanted to talk briefly about why this program is important to me and my fellow students. EPIC has given me a community of friends, faculty, and staff that I can rely on. When I was new to Delta College, I had a hard time finding my place in life after high school. This all changed when I found out about EPIC. EPIC has helped me appreciate my identity and learn about the history and accomplishments of our diverse Asian American communities.
30
When
seconds.
I joined EPIC, I started meeting new friends and I started breaking out of my shell, and I connected with professors and counselors such as Dr. Villavicencio, Ms. Louie, and Ms. Pearl, and these individuals helped me figure out my educational goals and inspired me to major in health science and transfer to Sac State. EPIC was very enjoyable because it helped me participate in volunteer opportunities, community building exercises, mental health clinics, and I was able to connect with counselors and educational advisors. And I was also selected to be one of the Delta College representatives for the APAHI conference in Oakland last April. And I learned about the importance of representation and having a voice that matters. I finally found a sense of belonging in my life, and I couldn't have done it without the support of EPIC. And thank you for supporting EPIC and programs like it in our state. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Next, we have Ethan Batano. You have control of your mic and can address the board.
Hello, distinguished board, distinguished members of the board. My name is Ethan Batano. I am a student at Delta College in Stockton, California with the EPIC Learning Program that supports our AANHPI students. I also wanted to talk briefly about why this program is important to me and my EPIC colleagues. Programs like EPIC have given me a group of friends that I can rely on, and also the faculty and staff like Dr. V, who is there right now. And when I first got to Delta College, I was lost because when I talked to multiple counselors, they had like multiple pathways for me to pick. But when I joined the EPIC Club, one counselor, Miss Louie, constructed a single pathway for me to get to where I'm supposed to be. Overall, EPIC has showed me that my dream of becoming a future cardiologist is possible. And recently I graduated from Delta and I will now be going to Sac State this coming fall semester. So thank you for supporting EPIC and similar programs in the state of California.
There are no other virtual hands raised.
Thank you so much. I do want to just note that Board Member Perry asked me to know that she wanted to make a statement as well, but she had to leave since we're a little bit over. So I told her I would make that comment. With that, the time is 5:45 p.m. and the business of the Board of Governors is now complete. We can adjourn. Thank you everyone for your participation today.